Welcome to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is indeed my show. You can say it's our show. I mean, after all, I can't necessarily have it without any of you. Otherwise, I'll be sitting here screaming the void by myself with no one watching. And I guess I make the same argument about like Amazon and these other organizations, right? Like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, they can have the greatest idea in the world. And yet, if it wasn't for people buying their products, working at their stores, the people who build the roads, people who keep the air clean, the people who educate their work staff, they will be sitting there by themselves with their thumb in their ass in their warehouse. So I want to thank all of you. I was laughing. I was trying to figure out what Navy Vet was talking about. It says, what is this? What is this? I made the shout out yesterday given by Jamal to all who stayed to the end of KJ's insight. I will never hate on China because I have no reason, but all of the Karens in the chat don't cry when called out. Yeah, KJ is a great guest, man. He's just a great guest. It's funny. Someone asked, they said, KJ and Carl. It's not that I hate the combination. It's just that people, they have a vibe. And I don't mean that KJ and Carl has a vibe. I just mean each one has a style. It's like having Teddy Pendergrass at a rap concert. You can do it. Just feels a little bit weird. And the context kind of has to work, right? Or having someone, at a Thursday concert and then somebody crooning the blues. You can do it. That's a hell of a combination. Is that combination going to work? Don't know. The reason I am looking for panels, by the way, the reason that I brought on Colonel Wilkerson and I'm trying to think of his title, Master Sergeant. I love that name because it reminds me of Halo, Master Sergeant, Master Chief, Master Sergeant Fritz. Because both of them have a cadence that works very well together. It just clicks. It just clicks very well. But look, I want to thank all of you guys. Shout out to all of you for being here. I have not seen Lath's video on Dialogue Works, Social Emotional Learning with Dr. Donnie. I have not. What is it? It's so good. I will check it out. I would definitely check it out. Lath is a really good guest. And speaking of Lath, or I should say, speaking of that area of the globe, we seem to be on the precipice of war. We seem to be on the precipice of war. And it is my driving, sincerest, most crystalline hope that Iran destroys each and every one of its enemies that are launching a unprovoked attack on Iran, if indeed that what comes to pass. I hope they blow everything out of the sky. I hope they destroy it all. I hope they create a new context of the world as a result of the forces that are allied against them losing and losing badly. As I kept saying, in the same way that Russia had to take its respect at the barrel of a gun, Iran may be put into the exact same situation. In this case, not the barrel of a gun, but at the barrel of a missile. Bullies should get smashed. I'm unequivocal about it. And if indeed you're going to go thousands of miles looking for monsters, when the monsters are really here, or the monsters are the one you're giving 80% of the military budget to commit a genocide for, oh my God, Iran is going to get nuclear missiles. While the sociopaths that you back already has them, then yes, Iran is my complete, unwavering support. This is nothing, by the way, about the government of Iran. This is nothing about the religious institutions of Iran. I am not a fan of theocracies. However, what takes place for Iran is for Iran and Iranians to deal with. And if we weren't a part of this process, Iran would develop as it develops. What I'm against is this idea of these unprovoked attacks on these countries in the Middle East causing more damage and more havoc than it's worth. And fact of the matter is there may be a lot of people that die, Americans, Israelis, Iranians, as a direct result of unprovoked aggression by the United States and by Israel. Do not get it twisted. This is not, oh my God, Israel has gone rogue. It's not that. It's not that. It is never that. It is the U.S. and its proxies are launching an unmitigated attack on the country. So like I said, don't get it twisted. Don't get it twisted. Don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe, as some people say. There's a media campaign that has effectively been going with this idea of trying to absolve the United States of all responsibility as if Iran is going rogue, or Iran is a rogue actor. Iran is not a rogue actor. Iran can't do anything without the permission, and yes, I use the term permission, of the United States. This came out on Press TV today because apparently many in the Middle East are leaving. At the very least, the United States is telling various people to leave. There's high military alertness. This is effectively what I woke up to this morning. I'm going to play this clip.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're interrupting the normal course of programming to focus on the following. A senior Iranian security official speaking exclusively to Press TV has warned that the Islamic Republic will surprise the U.S. and Israel if they attempt any aggressive action. In a follow-up to that, the senior official said the U.S.'s reduction of its staff and personnel in the region is not a message of threat, but rather a response to Iran's warnings against their interests. Ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. They fully understand what is coming. And what's wild about it is you get media in the United States that is trying to create this distance, the separation, this plausible deniability. I hope you understood what he said there. The US and Israel, there is no plausible deniability from the standpoint of Iran and Iran's response. They are fully aware of what the United States is doing. They are fully aware that Israel is not a dog off the leash. It is a dog perfectly on the leash, being sicked on another country by us. It's perfectly aware of it. Here is, and all of this is happening in tandem. So the IAEA comes out for the first time in 20 years, randomly, basically pointing out that Iran is breaching, right here, I just read it, Cradle Esteban Carrillo's organization, a damn good organization. The UN nuclear watchdog 35-member board of governors found that Iran to be in violation of its non-proliferation commitments for the first time in nearly 20 years, potentially setting the stage for referral to the UN Security Council. If you think this is random, you have not been paying attention. Iran, to their part, released the documents showing that Proxy has been working with Israel and working with Western states to undermine Iran. They initially pointed out that they had the documents. The IAEA noted that they had the documents, and this is them actually putting it out for you to see for your own eyes. What's wild about some of this is that the Iranian scientists that were murdered by Israel, apparently Israel got the names from the same IAEA that is now coming out claiming that Iran is in violation. Astonishing. They're talking about something that happened 20 years ago. They are. It is amazing. Europe is like, hey, we need to know what took place 20 years ago when we found something. And they're using this today as a pretext. It's, again, astonishing. Now, Iran, for its part, says, fair enough. If you do that, we are going to pull out of the non-proliferation Act treaty. Which, honestly, again, I keep saying this, they should have already built the bomb. Just saying. Religion is one thing, good sense and self-preservation is something else. I may not necessarily like guns. I may not necessarily like to kill people. If you come after my family, you're fair game. That's the way I look at it. And I feel the same thing about Iran and a nuclear weapon. This is an Israeli newspaper going all the way back to 1984. And I believe this is Lord Babo, who, again, as I always point out, does God's work. If anything happened to Lord Babo, I will be lost. 1984, Iran is in the final stages of making a nuclear bomb. 1984. We are what, 40 years later? And they are still running the same trope about Iran in the final stages of making a nuclear bomb. And to make this even clearer, again, Lord Babo, God's work, he points out the timeline of all of this, oh my God, Iran is going to get a nuclear bomb stuff. So this is, I don't even know if this timeline is complete. So right here, 1992, Iran is 3 to 5 years from nuclear capacity. Here's another one, 1993, Iran pursuing nuclear weapons close to capability, 3 to 5 years by 1996, 1998. 1995, Iran, 3 to 5 years from nuclear capacity, 3 to 5 years by 1998 to 2000. 1996, Iran's nuclear acquisition could be catastrophic. Deadline extremely close, within months to 1 year. This is 1996 to 1997. And it goes all the way down pretty much every year up to 2025. I also hate to point out that haven't we done this before? Oh my God, Iraq has nuclear weapons of mass destruction. And oh my God, Iraq is going to use those weapons of mass destruction. It's a risk to the region. It's a risk to the world. And so the US has to go in and has to stop Iraq from using weapons of mass destruction by killing 1 million people. That's what we need to do. If you remember, in the very early stages of that campaign, it started off as Iraq was helping Osama bin Laden, and then changed into Iraq has weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Then it turned into, well, we're here to help the women. We're help women and gays. That's what we're here in Iraq to do, help women and gays. I can't believe people still fall for this. It's so shallow. It's so on its face ridiculous. And yet, over and over and over again. And even if they did, I don't care. Iran is not a threat to me. It's not a threat to anybody who I care about. The people who are a threat to me and people I care about are in this country running this government with this band of sociopaths that are effectively provoking and initiating a war that is unnecessary, never needed to take place, that is thousands and thousands and thousands of miles. It would take what? 28 hours, 30 hours to get to Iran, give or take, depending upon the flight that you take. But for whatever particular reason, magically, Iran is apparently trying to produce a nuclear weapon. And what makes this even worse is Western media. Western media has some of the dumbest people on the planet working for it. And I can't tell if they hire stupid people intentionally or otherwise. I know they think they're pretty brilliant. But all things being equal, you're looking for ideological actors with ideological blinders who would effectively repeat exactly what they are told and would run with the story, whether the story makes sense or not, without any analysis built into it on the credibility, legitimacy of the argument, and with the memory of a hamster. 5-minute memory. Hey, they said weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, now they're saying this about Iran. Do you see any connection between those things? What do you mean weapons of mass destruction in Iraq? I don't remember that. No, you don't remember that, do you? You don't remember that. They are trying to create a separation between the United States and Israel to create some level of plausible deniability that under no circumstances exists. If you are giving 80% of the military budget to a country, how are you not controlling that country? Explain that to me. So when Israel says, we're going to go in and hit Iran, and if Trump came out and said, you will get no support from us after you do that, what will Israel do? How about that question? You will get no backing from us in the UN Security Council. You will get no backing from us in regards to diplomatic support. You would get no money from us. You would get no weapons from us. You would get nothing from us. Nothing. No soup for you. As KJ would say, or Seinfeld would say, not KJ, Carl Jara. You get nothing if you do this. That's not what the U.S. is saying at all. The U.S. is like, golly gee, it looks like they're going to attack. I guess we can't do anything about it. It's like, hey, are you going to support Israel if they attack? And Iran responds, when Iran responds, yes, we will. We will. We will. So what's the hedge to get them attacking? I guess there isn't one. But they're going rogue. I'm saying the argument makes no sense on its face. And yet Western media will repeat it. It is absurd. It is absurd. I want to go to my guests because I want to hit this a little bit later in the show. We have Sarah Bils that's going to be here later. We also have Patrick Henningsen, and I know Patrick wants to hit this pretty hard. But I am joined with my name, Arnaud, and I always want to get this right because for some reason, Arnaud, I always want to call you something else. But Deverlay, Arnaud Deverlay, he is, there we are. He is author, political analyst, and international lawyer specializing in international criminal law. His latest book, Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing of America's Political Consensus. Arnaud, we got to get you to write another book, my man. How you doing?
I'm okay, Jamal. How are you?
I'm doing fine. So you hit me in a text, and you asked me if we were going to cover. Oh, I see. Yes, the Convo and Bryansk. I watched that. Basically, the litany of trucks and vehicles that were in the road as Russia was driving through, and you can see all of the Ukrainian vehicles just destroyed and just annihilated. I think I even have that clip that I can pull up in a moment. But first and foremost, like I said, how you doing? You having a good day so far?
Yes, I'm okay. Are you referring to the refrigerated trucks with the Ukrainian corpses inside?
Yes. Unless we're talking about something else. I thought that was
that's
convoy.
it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's
okay.
The convoy.
Yeah. I've been watching Russia stream towards Sumy. Ukraine has been pulling forces from other parts of the battlefield. It doesn't seem to be working. Russia still seems
Actually,
to be.
That's the one in Bryansk.
No, I know. I'm just.
Oh, right.
Okay, so we may be talking about different ones. So let me pull this up. Convo of the dead Kiev's mendacious pretext to disown his fallen soldiers. Oh, okay. You mean okay. I'm sorry. I'm confused. Do you mean the refrigeration trucks that they refuse to accept the people? Yeah, that is grotesque. That is grotesque. From my understanding, they only recently accepted those soldiers. I mean, they didn't want to pay for the soldiers. They didn't want to. They tried to pass a law that said they didn't have to pay for the soldiers. Like, shameful. Go into that for me. And I think part of the embarrassment is that the number of soldiers that Russia is returning versus Ukraine is returning is so radically different. I mean, Russia is given like 6,000 soldiers.
That's the real story, actually. Yes, to me anyway. Yeah. It's the ratio that's disproportionate. Well, I mean, just so that so that our viewers can have a contextualized approach on the story. So we had those rounds of talks in Istanbul in late May, early June, and on the 2nd of June there was a meeting between the Ukrainian and Russian delegations. They decided to at least agree on proceeding with humanitarian issues, i.e. swapping of POWs, right? Why is that? Because Zelensky himself essentially prohibited his delegation from engaging in negotiation bearing on territorial issues, status of Ukraine in as far as NATO is concerned, the size of the Ukrainian armies, if and when the conflict comes to an end, etc., etc. So there was nothing left really to discuss but technical humanitarian issues. And to the extent that the Ukrainians did not want to aggravate Donald Trump, one can assume, there was at least some attractions on those issues.
Yeah.
So where everything started veering off the script is when the Russians unilaterally offered to provide Kiev a batch of its fallen soldiers, 6,000 of them, no less. And that's when somehow so they never said anything explicitly. They tried to seek refuge in technicalities bearing on agreed upon lists that they needed time to verify that the data that were provided by the Russians were actually accurate. But the Russians, obviously would not have gone out of their way to do so unless they did all the legwork, which they did. And so after about 3-4 days of, mute silence, essentially, punctuated by a statement by Budanov himself that, we would take care of it next week. Yes, next week. So we're Sunday. I was there. We were called like just a mere few hours before, to head to Bryansk to basically document the transfer and the transfer that never took place on Sunday, essentially. And so yes, basically we're talking about what, 6,000 fallen soldiers. With the first batch of them, 1,212, if I recall, stored in refrigerated trucks, ready to be handled over, pretty much. Right. And when the swap did indeed take place yesterday, Wednesday, we're looking at a situation where Ukraine gets 1,200 and some of its fallen soldiers, and the Russian Federation retrieved 27, which is a ratio of 1:45, essentially. Wow. So you got to keep in mind that Zelensky himself went on record last December 2024 in a Politico article where he claimed that the grand total losses of the Ukrainian armed forces stood at 43,500, with about 400,000 wounded. If you look at just one batch, and I surmise that there are more of those Ukrainian fallen soldiers that Russia is actually, keeping on ice. No pun intended. Why? For the simple reason that Ukraine does not retrieve its dead at all. This is actually something that's handled by Russian soldiers. And you have to keep in mind that when those bodies are recovered, they've been laying into the field for a few days at the very least. And so the state of the corpses are very damaged. You have rodents, you have the weather elements, you have stray dogs picking at it. So by the time basically the bodies are recovered, retrieved, they're all mangled. So this is basically a PR disaster for Ukraine. So of course, and this was mentioned by one of your guests, there's the compensation issue, of course, i.e. that all the money that might have been made available to compensate families, keeping in mind that those soldiers, by and large, for a lot of them, were enticed to join the military in exchange for financial compensation. Right. To the extent they were sent into the meat grinder, the very least that they could expect was for their family to be getting some kind of pension. So that's basically a scam. It's an illusory promise. That's what we call it at law, an illusory promise. The Kievan elites want to have their cake and eat it too, essentially, and they do not care, how many of their own sons, and from what I understand, soon daughters, get to be sent to a certain death. I think the average lasting, surviving expectation is about 3 days. Sometimes it's even 1 day. Suffice it to say that it's a PR disaster, which, when you take into account the fact that Zelensky and his ilk have been waging essentially a PR war as opposed to a bona fide, self-reflected military conflict, this is really something that could break open the whole thing in Ukraine. Because basically what it shows is that not only do the Ukrainian elites do not care about their dead, they do not care about the most simple, basic principle of international humanitarian law, which is actually something that even the Ukrainian branch of the International Red Cross has taken great care in reminding people on their own Twitter feed, involves, providing closure to the families. So we have somewhat of a tacit complicity of the ICRC on this, because they could not ignore what is going on the battlefield, and that those numbers don't add up. Therefore, to the extent they are also in touch with the Russian Federation, obviously, because they're supposed to be neutral and they're supposed to be supervising the parties to the conflict in as far as they're abiding to the Geneva Convention. But strangely enough, the ICRC has been extremely coy and, if not outright, silent, in trying to prompt Kiev to at least abide by the most elementary laws of wars. And so, what I'm understanding here, my take on it, is that this is not the end of it. That to the extent they have finally relanded and basically gone out and showed up and retrieved their dead, there's a precedent that's been established now. By the way, the Red Cross was present yesterday during the transfer. And to the extent, as I believe, there are possibly tens of thousands more corpses, Ukrainian corpses, being processed as we speak in Russian morgues. Russia could very well, and they actually announced there will be a third round of discussion in Istanbul, because for a few days there was somewhat a noise coming out of Kiev that, that third round of discussion, I don't know about this. But, now we know for a fact there will be a third round of discussion. What else is going to be discussed if, again, the issue of humanitarian, law? This is the only mandate that the Ukrainian delegation has. So this should make for very interesting development, in the future. And to me, to the extent military observers are wont to describe key battles or development of wonder weapons, or a palace crew that sees, the ruling faction being toppled by an opposite faction, in order to at least salvage what can be salvaged of a country that's losing a conflict, so that they can rule over what's left of it. In this particular case, and to the extent this conflict has been characterized, at least in as far as Kiev is concerned, as a PR operation, this particular thing is going to be increasingly difficult to basically push aside. And it might just be, the proverbial dam that's going to blow open, the whole thing, as far as Kiev being able to sell their legitimacy to Ukrainian people per se.
Yeah, it's shameful. I mean, it really is. I mean, you pointed something out. So they are now talking about enlisting women to go fight. And Zelensky pointed out that the Western governments were pressuring it to bring in 18-year-olds. And it's like, okay, so you're trying to enlist women to go fight the war, and you can't even pay for the bodies that are already being given to you by the opponent. And so from my understanding, this is going to be like $1 billion that they would have had to pay out that you just don't have. Meaning, that's the dirty secret. They don't have the money to pay these families, even though they try to get more and more families to go out and fight and die over and over again. And it's like, I don't know how that works in a country. Like the outrage that would take place in the US if that happened, oh, it would be over the top. But do you see this as being politically destabilizing in Ukraine itself proper? Like, how does Kiev deal with this? I mean, politically, or is it just, no, men are scared to come out their houses because they're going to be snatched and thrown to the front lines? Like, what is your take on this?
Well, as you mentioned, at the same time, simultaneously, they keep snatching people off, and they're going to be lowering conscription age, and they're going to be going after women. So if on top of it now you start having batches, thousands of corpses being flooding essentially the Ukrainian morgues, notwithstanding every measure being implemented to control the flow of information in Ukraine, there's going to be a word of mouth. People are going to be talking, and people already are talking. But to the extent, this is becoming more and more of an issue, it's going to completely undermine this notion that Kiev is taking care, doing the utmost to preserve its soldiers as opposed to sending them to a certain death. There's nothing that, like a grieving family talking to another grieving families, in as far as how long it took them to know for a fact that their sons or brothers, or sometimes their uncles or fathers even, because I know they've been sending, 50, 60-year-old people into the meat grinder. How are you going to, at some point, stop, the leaking? It's going to be almost impossible. It might take some time, but you know how it is. It's a slow trickle, and then it becomes a gush, and the next thing you know, the whole dam is bursting open, and we could be witnessing an outright revolt, because what do people have to lose? I mean, if the predicate is to say, okay, fine, the country is under attack, the sovereignty of the country is under attack. We understand those Russian people are really, really evil. They really want to take us, down. We'll do what we have to do. That's the social contract. But the assumption is that you're going to provide us with the proper gears, and you're going to basically respect your own laws. There's a presidential decree that was adopted actually in the Council of Ministers on February 28, 2022, bearing on the financial compensation for families, set at $50,000. So you are violating your own regulations, your own laws, and basically, what do we get out of this? We're basically bleeding for you to purchase a chalet in France or Monaco, to get luxury vehicles and jewelry. I mean, people know what's going on in Ukraine for years as far as the corruption is concerned, but I don't think people can necessarily imagine the depth and the reach of the said corruption when it comes down to their loved ones. And this could really be, the tipping point that basically says, we're not going to fight no matter what, and if anything, we're going to seek vengeance.
I want to hit you with something else. Russia is streaming in Sumi. It seems that they can't be stopped. There have been all sorts of precision strikes taking place in Kharkov. Kharkov has been getting hit left and right. Taking place in Kiev, hitting missile facilities, mercenary locations, weapons manufacturing, missiles, meaning Storm Shadow, Scalp. They've blown up Patriot missile systems. This seems to be a new phase of the war. Russia seems to have gotten the message that Trump either can't be trusted or has no power over his government, which would also mean Trump can't be trusted, and that they are pursuing unconditional surrender. Is that a fair assessment of what seems to be taking place in Moscow right now?
Yes, I think you're right. And I'm sure they are, the Russian elites are the first one to be sorry about it, because there were a lot of expectations, reasonable expectations, were born out of Trump's elections and Trump's campaign promises and his bravado statements on the Ukrainian issue needing to be put to an end. So they gave it time. They provided him with all the elements that he needed. But in the end, and especially in as far as the recent terrorist attack, bearing on the railways, 4 of them, and the spectacular attacks on some of the strategic airplanes, bombers, in those bases far from the front, like 4,000 kilometers east, has really prompted the Russian leadership to step it up and basically, double down on taking down all the capabilities that Kiev still holds available to wage what is increasingly becoming a terrorism war. And so a lot of people are saying, why don't we just declare war once and for all and be done with it? Well, because we're not dealing with a country that's connected where to the issue of the Ukrainian debt, is that this country is not a regular country. They are not abiding by any international treaties. They're a
Right.
bunch of thugs, and so they're acting as thugs, and so you're not going to extend to them, the protocol that would imply that you're going to declare war on another country. Basically it's a police operation. It's a policing operation. It started as a police operation on February 24th, 2022, and now it's becoming an anti-terrorism operation. So that's what it is, and but to the extent that clique has got access to important, substantial support, military support, material support, advising support, you need to basically amputate, surgically strike and dismantle methodically all those devices that they. So there's been an issue talking also about the bridges. A lot of people have been commenting on the fact that why hasn't Russia bombed the bridges, 16 or 17 of them on the Dnieper River? Well, owing to the fact that those bridges are used by Ukrainian civilians, but it would seem as if increasingly even those bridges might just be fair game now. So I think Russia, as the summer gets in full swing, is gearing up for a full-fledged offensive, and they're going to basically try to collapse the front. Some say in the Sumy Kharkov region. We have the Russian army has entered the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast.
Yep.
But for all I know, we could also see some action down in Kherson, Zaporozhye. It's difficult to exactly see where. It all depends. They're probing the front, applying pressure points to the extent they find soft ground. They will usher in, create those cauldrons, try to encircle cities, not taken by force, preserve their forces, go around them, cut off all kind of supplies to out and into the cities, and keep moving westward until at some point Kiev does not have the means to keep waging this conflict. This has gone on long enough. It's definitely something now, because you have to understand that public opinion in Russia is also extremely angry about what has happened last couple of weeks. We've heard all kind of people calling for the most radical means of retaliation, and so
nukes. They're calling for nukes.
Yeah, I mean, so you put yourself in the shoes of Putin. He has to be the arbiter of all those factions.
Yeah.
And to that extent, he has to be the adult, I guess, in the room. And make sure he does not get goaded at the same time and handle a PR victory to NATO, because that's what they want. They want him to basically lose it, quote unquote, so that they can get themselves a new lease on life as far as PR is concerned. So it's really a delicate balance. You want to ramp it up, but you don't want to go to so much overboard that you are handing over a PR win on the other side. So this is where we are right now. This is where we are. The
Brits. And I'm going to say the Brits, even though I'm saying America and the Brits, but I'm going to say the Brits. For Russian media, I think I know why. But I'm going to put that to the side. The Gray Zone UK came out with an article pointing out that the Brits have been working with the Ukrainians step by step on terrorist activities for the state of Ukraine, especially from the standpoint of going after this kind of war of attrition just below the threshold of direct warfare with Russia in the Black Sea. My feeling on this, and part of me, the reason why I say I'm sick of this war, is the longer it goes on, the more Europe is prepared or gets prepared for something. That's assuming they're able to cobble themselves together. And B, the longer it allows this sort of sniping from the background, like the Brits or the Americans or whoever else, to hit Russia while simultaneously saying we don't have anything to do with the fact that you just got hit. I've seen them blow up British office in Kiev. Slightly funny to me. But what is the plan for that? I mean, or is there a plan for that? Is it we're just going to maintain course? There may be these terrorist activities that we just accept as we pursue the ends to finish the war.
You mean on the Ukrainian NATO side?
Yeah. I mean, it's not entirely Ukrainian terror by itself. I mean, it's the Brits. You have the foreign
but you're
countries.
saying, but so okay. Yes, of course. This is what they know. That cannot militarily change the complexion of the conflict. This conflict is inherently lost, owing to a whole range of factors which have been discussed and inventoried by a lot of experts. So this is not about winning that conflict. This is not about regaining the lost territories, and this is certainly not about regaining Crimea, as some want of saying in some, amidst some drug-induced delirium tremens. So no, what is it about? It's about keeping the conflict going at all costs, and again, trying to, in order to escalate, because some people want escalation. Make no mistake about it. We're not dealing with rational people, and to the extent some people on the Western side of things are somewhat more rational than others. It's all a matter of perspective, I guess. There are some who are definitely gung ho about making sure this whole thing veers out of control, literally. Why? Because the moment the game is up, there's going to be so many, bats coming out of hell. What were they doing? How much were they involved? Who has the receipts? You're not going to be able to cut all the loose ends on your way out as you evacuate yourself. Yeah. Everybody's going to be scurrying out of Ukraine because they know what's coming for them if they stick around too long. So they are pretty much all joined at the hip that this thing has to be maintained in such a way that we can somehow continue pretending to rule over what's left of the country and doing running our businesses, whatever that business may be: biolabs, organ trafficking, weapons trafficking, organs trafficking, kids trafficking. You name it, the list is endless. It's a cluster F, this place.
Yeah.
So to the extent, they lose the conflict, a la Berlin, i.e. the Russians, launch somewhat of a lightning operation and decapitate the regime. Just imagine how some people, not all of them, but some people are going to be feeling in Western capitals, because they are themselves completely involved up to the shoulder in this whole thing.
Dejected. Yeah, they're going to be dejected is an understatement. It is human. Pete Hegseth was at a Senate committee hearing, and Mitch McConnell was like, "Hey, are we going to help the Ukrainians out?" And Hegseth pointed out, he says, "What we don't want is to show not only did Ukraine lose, but America lost also." And it's like, dude, that ship is sunk. Like you can't get out. Like, this is the thing about the Trump administration, this pretending like that is Joe Biden's war, as opposed to, no, that it's America's war and you're an American president and you're continuing the war. Don't give me this nonsense that you're just a third party actor in this. It's just nonsense. I want to pivot to a different issue. I want to talk about Iran. Iran and Russia and China, for that matter, has a strategic relationship. And I'm going to add North Korea into that also. In the same way that I would argue that Russia on some level was damaged by Syria falling, they will be just as damaged, if not more so, if anything happens to Iran. Now, I understand that these are different countries, fair enough. Each one has their own strategic interests. Again, fair enough. Russia's in the middle of a war, and Putin can't be expected to be God-man, just be everywhere at once. Fair enough. what is the Russian reaction to what seems to be the United States unilateral hit attack, unprovoked, on Iran? And I'm saying, I don't care if Israel is carrying the weapons any more than I care if Ukrainians are carrying the weapons. It's the United States war. Look at this notion that Israel is, this rogue dog that just went off the chain. It's nonsense. We are giving them all of the money, all of the weapons. They're using that money and those weapons in order to go attack another country. How on earth can we say, oh my God, Israel went rogue? Really? Did they really go rogue? Give me a take on this. What is the Russian perspective of this? Because I haven't necessarily heard anything out of Russia on this issue as this has been ramping up.
Yes, you're right. It should be said right out of the gate. Russians being very silent about this. It doesn't mean that they're not doing anything behind closed doors. Sure, there's a flurry of meetings and discussions taking place, trying to prevent, this type of scenario from taking place. This being said, Russia, by and large, tends to hope for the best and prepare for the worst. That's basically it. And they know they're not going to be able to prevent a unilateral strike of the Israelis, which will generate a robust reaction from Iran, which said reaction will involve dismantling or at least attacking all the US bases in the region, making the US de facto a party to the conflict. So nobody wants to, this is not something that anybody in the region and beyond, because think about the economic, impact that this conflict, if it happens, will have on the world economy. So it's not a matter of saying, this is just a regional issue. This could be World War III. And so nobody really knows what's going to happen. And I guess the Russian position on this is try to not make any statements which could be inflammatory or perceived as such. But make contingency plans as much as possible.
What does that mean, contingency plans? I mean, because from my take on this will be chaos. And for the point of view of saying, well, nobody wants
it would be a free for
really?
It would be a free for all. To be
Yes,
sure, it's going to be a free for all. This is the final drop. If this thing with Iran goes on, this is we're going to open the gates of hell, literally. And so in that particular context, then anything is possible. I mean, everybody's going to be running out for the exits, trying to preserve what can be preserved, because the chain reaction is going to be of such magnitude that no one will be left unscathed, to be sure.
But no one else is saying anything. That's the part that's blowing my mind.
Because there's this sense that rational minds will prevail, and these things.
Why do they think that? These are not rational people.
Why do they think that? Well, especially in Tel Aviv, they're not rational. Yes, you're right.
There's been a context of events over the course of the last, 20 years. Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, etc., all the way up to the point of Iran. And if over the last 20 years, you've seen one government attack, topple,
fall,
attack
after the other, yes.
Yeah, then why do they think? And I've had people on the show who said the exact same thing. Well, I mean, I just can't believe that they do that. And it's like, why don't you believe they would do that? Like, that's the part that always blows my mind. Why do you think that ideologues are rational human beings? They're ideologues. They're called ideologues for exact reason. Were there rational people who looked at the Ukraine war?
Messianic ideologues. It's even worse.
Yeah, they're even worse, right? These are religious maniacs. Yes. And so, like, when they looked at Ukraine and they said, hey, Russia is Nigeria with snow. Is that a rational point of view? I don't think it is. But in their minds, we can totally destroy Russia. We can totally take its resources. We can totally do so and so. And then they're like, oh my God, Ukraine got crushed with all of the powers of NATO backing it. Were they being rational when they provoked that war that could have brought the world to the brink of nuclear devastation? No, they weren't. My point is the same thing is true for this. I don't know why people think that rationality will somehow come into play. These people are lunatics. They're sociopaths.
Yes, absolutely. But I don't know. I guess something that has to do with deeply ingrained mechanism of self-defense, psychologically speaking, within human beings. They're trying to always convince themselves that we're, amongst gentlemen, and that no one can anticipate or imagine that an individual within, the group will sour the whole supper for everybody, because nobody wants to conceive that this guy has its own priorities. In a way, it's predicated on national interest and self-preservation. That should be, the two main legs on which statecraft is predicated. But here, we're not dealing with a state like any other state. It's actually not a regular state. It's a state that has no constitution, no established borders, who considers its legal raison d'être to be some kind of a promise from a being in the sky. It's insane.
See, you're blaming Israel. I'm blaming America. There's a big difference in those things. I don't think
But to
this
me,
is Israel's war. I think this is
I
America's
think they're
war.
one and the same. No, I
Yeah.
think to me, they're fusioned at the hip. And 9/11 revealed that they're fusioned at the hip. This started in the late 60s, and it got worse and worse. And now, and this was said at the time by senior defense, neocon defense department, I think it might have been Richard Pearl or Wolfowitz, that we've come to a point where it's not a sliver of light in terms of national interest between Israel and the United States. And that's the worst thing that can happen. I mean, because fundamentally what you learn in international relations and or political theory 101 is that no two states have the same sets of interests. But
Correct.
here they've managed somehow to conflate the two in such a way that, for a whole range of reasons, which we're not going to get into, but, playing on the, the city on the hill thing in the US. I mean, this kind of exceptionalism, this kind of electiveness, playing also on the, what's an important base in the US, those evangelical Christians who have their own motives to support Israel unconditionally. But in the end, until their own objectives are accomplished, they're in no matter what. And to the extent they consider all the people in the region like Edens, it's not hard to imagine that if the idea is to make Israel the preeminent regional power, i.e. fulfill what's on their flag, from the Euphrates to the Nile, it's not going to be sufficient with 7 million Israelis. You're going to have a lot more people to do it. And so I think a lot of, that pioneer spirit that you find in some Southern Belt states, faced with unemployment at home and the loss of industrial base, if you give them the opportunity, under the veneer of religiosity, to go and carve themselves, a piece of land in, let's say, Syria or Iraq or a chunk of Saudi Arabia, they'll take it. It's all a matter of marketing. How do you sell it? How do you package
Egypt,
it?
same thing. Egypt, like these countries are standing around.
Manifest destiny. You just transplant Project Manifest Destiny from the continental United States into West Asia. That's it. We're the good guys. In the end, we're the good guys. Always remember that.
Okay. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, these countries are standing around like, they're committing a genocide.
Arabs. They're Arabs.
It's like, you're next, buddy. You're next. They're not stopping.
We don't care about you.
Yeah,
without you waking up one day, and luckily finding some gas or petroleum under, your butt. What have you done in that country of yours? Nothing. We are, we bring technology, we bring modernity, we bring civilization. This is how those guys think.
I'm curious, has Russia been hardening Iran for this? Iran has been preparing for this war for 20 years. I've talked to Morandi. Morandi was like, we've been preparing for the United States for 20 years. And if we need to take our respect at the barrel of a gun, then we need to take our respect at the barrel of a gun. That's the way they seem to look at it. Sovereignty is not up for grabs. I know that Iran and Russia has a security partnership, not in the sense of one comes to the other's aid, not like North Korea, but definitely
A
we will help.
strategic partnership. Yes.
Exactly, strategic partnership. Thank you.
Not secure, yes. But
So-
that partnership does not imply that Russia would send its armed forces to defend Iran.
Right.
Let's be clear about this.
Right.
So, whereas
And
North
Russia has its own
Korea,
concern. It has its own concern.
yes, yeah. Well, because it's a great power, so a great power has to somewhat refrain from getting intertwined in local regional issues if they want to have later on the possibility to mediate as between parties from a equidistant point of view, I guess, or take on the matter. So that, which makes sense. I mean, it makes perfect sense. But
Kind of.
you have a strategy.
Ish.
Well, the thing is, you have a strategic. If you have a strategic partner with a country like Iran, and somehow the perception, because it's all about perception, and this is something the Russian, in my humble opinion, need to really work on, is to understand the perception abroad. If they're not doing the bare minimum to preserve relationship with countries who also value sovereignty, independence, and building ties, whether it's through trade or cultural exchanges or what have you, is that if you keep somehow stepping right off the precipice every time it looks as if it's going that way, you're not going to be left with a lot of friends. You're going to be finding yourself surrounded sooner or later.
Yes.
And everybody else who might have been supportive and enthusiastic about that vision of the world of tomorrow that you are offering, they're going to be somehow feeling reticent to put all their eggs in your basket, because they're going to be like, look what happened to X. Once upon a time, X was one of our boys, and nobody came to its rescue.
Does Russia understand that part of the rationale of going after Iran is to get rid of a regional supporter of Russia? The United States is perfectly aware that the Dronium-2 drones or Garin-2 drones or whatever those things were coming from Iran, that damaged us in pursuit of our objectives in Ukraine, because those things were just phenomenal piece of technology that just killed so many Ukrainians, meaning it damaged our ability to accomplish our objectives in the war with Ukraine. We know that. We're not going to forget that. And part of taking Iran off the playing field is to isolate Russia that much more so. Does Russia get that? I mean, it has to know that.
Well, it depends who you talk to, but there are some opinions, especially at the state, the level of government workers. Everybody is not going to voice out those opinions. Everybody wants to basically lay low and just go about their business. So you are invited to keep your opinions to yourself. This is what happens when you don't have an ideology per se, a militant ideology. You gotta be. Carl Schmitt used to say that naming the enemy is indispensable if you want to win any conflict. If you're somehow assuming that the U.S. is a neutral, impartial partner to help you broker peace with Ukraine, when in fact they've been the main engineer of everything that you've been dealing with the last 10 years, what does that project as an image to other countries? Is that you're not even willing to somehow offend your Western partners who have no care about you? It's Russophobia is there to exemplify this. 10% of what goes on right now in the context of Russophobia, if it involved other people, the whole world would be up, in uproar. But Russia somehow, it's okay. Well, it's just the Russians, So this gives you an idea of how, Western elite think about Russia. They don't care. Russia right now, they're somewhat putting water in their wine because they understand that, they're checkmate right now. They are being checkmate.
Yeah.
So they'll bid their time. They'll show themselves patience, and in a few years down the road, they'll try again to the extent the extent the situation has evolved to a place where they can try it again, they will try it again.
Why do I feel like I'm more of a hard ass on this than what's coming out of the Kremlin right now? And I live here. I know how we think. Maybe it's that.
Yeah, but I've told them the same. I've met people, at the State Duma. I've told them what you and I are discussing now. I've told them. They seem to be thinking I'm a lunatic for saying that. What can I say?
In fact, at the first opportunity, mark my words, I may be dead in the ground. At the first opportunity, if we get the chance to take advantage of Russia, we will. If we get the chance to knock China off the map or knock Iran off the map or some other country that supports them, we will do it. We will do it in a heartbeat.
It don't matter. Yes.
Arnaud, thank you for this. Great conversation, man. I just see some of the stuff that's coming out of Russian media. And like they would say stuff like, Russia no longer considers the United States its main enemy. And I'm like, you can't be serious. You can't be serious, right? You can't be putting this poll out. This poll can't be serious. And I'm like, how do I live here and more aware of this than, all right, put it this way. There are maybe 100,000 Russians, if not more, that are no longer here. We did that. I mean, Ukraine might have been carrying the weapons, but we did that. And Russia should never forget that. That's all I'm saying. Arnaud,
well, there are some Russians, to be sure, who are aware of that, which is why, I guess, to the extent the guy in charge is not going to be there forever. So be careful what you wish for on the side of the West. They might think the guy, that particular guy is the sole reason why right now things are not moving forward. But to the extent he gets replaced by somebody who's not going to have any qualms and not going to be feeling concerned about, how am I going to be perceived? There are some people like that here.
Yeah.
We don't care.
Be careful what you wish for. Yeah. Arnaud Develay, thank you for this, man. Really good conversation. I appreciate this. I've been itching to have that talk. Arnaud Develay, he's an author, political analyst, and international lawyer specializing in international criminal law. His latest book, Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing of America's Political Consensus. You have a fantastic evening. Be safe, okay?
Thank you, sir.
All right. I see my guest is here, the man himself, Patrick Henningsen. And let me give his bio. Patrick Henningsen, he is political or geopolitical analyst and host of The Sunday Wire, creator of 21st Century Wire, and critic of mainstream media. Patrick, how you doing, man? You doing okay today?
I'm doing very well, Jamal. Busy day, isn't it?
It is indeed a busy day. I titled this show very straightforwardly, the U.S., through its proxy, Israel, is preparing to attack Iran. Because that's what it is. It's through its proxy, Israel, preparing to attack Iran. Do you give any credence to this idea that Israel is a rogue actor? That there are some, the dog is just off the leash. The U.S. has no power over it. And the reason why I point that out is if you go to the Washington Post, there's been a concerted media effort to try to distance the U.S. policy from Israel as if the U.S., oh, golly gee, Israel is just a rogue actor right here. In recent months, U.S. intelligence officials have grown increasingly concerned that Israel may choose to strike Iran's nuclear facilities without the consent of the United States. Such a move would almost certainly scuttle Trump's administration's delicate nuclear negotiations and prompt an Iranian retaliation on U.S. assets in the region. Again, they're acting as if they're doing this entirely without the U.S. consent. The U.S. can do nothing about it. We just give them 80% of their military budget and weapons. Oh, golly gee. What can we say? What can we do? They're an independent state. Give me your take on this. This is so frustrating to me.
This debate is happening, especially in our circles, our sort of end of the political, geopolitical sphere, commentary and independent journalism and so forth. And I think a lot of people approach this wrong. A lot of people are so polarized and so, you could say, ideologically driven or partisan. They think it's one or the other. They think either Israel is a tool of America or, Israel's, the tail wagging the American dog, as it were. And Israel's, got control of the United States government. The truth of the matter, if you really look at it, If you really look at it and analyze it, it's both. Okay, it is both. The two are intertangled, very, very deeply intertangled.
Patrick, 1 second. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you increase your volume just a little bit? The audience is saying
okay.
they're having difficulty hearing you.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, you're perfectly fine.
Yeah. How's that? Is that better? Getting good feedback?
It's no feedback.
Good.
No, go for it.
Okay. So the way people are framing this argument in the independent media, especially, people are ideologically driven, and it's either one or the other. It's either the U.S. Uses Israel as a sort of imperial beachhead in the Middle East, or it's that Israel has total control over. They've captured the United States government, and the tail is wagging the dog. Okay, the truth is it's both. Okay, the two are intermeshed, and Israel has incredible control over the legislative and the executive branches of the United States government, and that's control that the lobby has built up since the 1960s, and really sort of completely tightened its grip in the last, I would say, 10 years, through the introduction of massive sums of money flowing into Congress and Senate campaigns. Almost everybody is on the Israeli lobby payroll, not just IPAC, but a whole bevy of other lobbyists as well, including the President of the United States. And the power that, and this is another thing that people, even John Mearsheimer and Stephen Walt, somewhat missed this in their great book and academic research paper, The Lobby, is that what does that money buy you? Israel put, 250 whatever million into the Trump 2.0 campaign. Sheldon Adelson and the lobby did the same in Trump 1.0. And they bought his allegiance to the issue without any qualifications, by the way. If you remember the 2016 election, Trump made a statement in the winter 2015, one of the first debates. He said, I would like to see peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis. And everybody went wild. It's like, wow, it sounded like Ron Paul, And so immediately he was summoned to meet Sheldon Adelson at that point. That was late 2015. And that's when Trump did a hard pivot on Israel, okay? Not that he would have, he probably would have got there anyway, but that's how that happened in sequential order. So what do you buy with all that money? $600 million into the Republican coffers from Israeli lobby and Israeli linked organizations in this last election cycle. You can purchase the entire cabinet. The Israeli lobby had effective control of Trump's transition team head, Howard Lutnick, and Jared Kushner. I don't need to explain much more. And so they gave a short list to the president of cabinet positions pre-approved by the top Israeli donors, including probably Benjamin Netanyahu himself is included in that approval process. So who makes policy, Jamal? It's not the president. It's definitely not this president. It's the people around him, and other presidents is the same. They make policy. The cabinet ultimately makes policy as well, of course, as the congressional branches as well. This isn't the first time this happened. This is not just for the Israeli lobby. Wall Street selected Obama's cabinet in his first term. They provided a short list because they owned that president. They put in the most money and support, and they made sure that he got elected over Hillary Clinton for the Democratic nomination in 2008, and also to defeat John McCain, which was a bit of a cakewalk, let's face it. So I gave that long-winded explanation as people need to understand how the mechanisms work. Okay, so foreign policy is definitely decided by the lobby and the lobby's handpicked cabinet members. And just to show you how this works, okay, and this is an important lesson people need to understand. Know your politics. Know your politics, okay? How Washington works. When does a president ever come in and take people out of the House, safe seats in the House of Representatives? Never. But Trump does. Why? Because when you go to pick cabinet positions, either the head of the CIA, Secretary of State, head of intelligence, etc., you normally go from think tanks, from policy world, from the diplomatic corps, from the permanent civil service state. That's who you select from academia. And guess what? The Israeli lobby doesn't have any control over any of those people. They only have control over the ones they groom from their first campaign. Those are congressmen and congresswomen and senators. So who did he choose? Marco Rubio, Mike Pompeo, all these guys, Mike Waltz. He raided Elise Stefanik, took her out of a safe seat, a Republican seat in New York. Unheard of.
Yeah,
That
you don't do that. You just don't do that. Yeah.
As a UN ambassador. And guess what? Trump panicked because they were going to lose that seat. So he took her out of the UN ambassadorship and back into her position. And that was an Israeli pick. And she was all traveling to Israel every 2 weeks, doing the photo ops with Netanyahu, Mike Huckabee. Mike Huckabee is another example, someone who's owned by the Israeli lobby his entire career, and probably his daughter as well. And Tom Cotton is owned by, but look at Trump's cabinet. Who does that? Nobody does that. It's the stupidest thing in the world for a president. If you want your party to hold the House and Senate and dominate, you don't steal people out of their positions and put them in cabinet positions unless somebody is dictating that. A foreign government is dictating that. Israel dictates that. That's the big secret that nobody likes to talk about with the Trump administration, okay? So Israel is an imperial beachhead. It was initially designed by the British and the Americans, and conceived in its final stages with the United States support especially, as an imperial beachhead to control the Middle East and the burgeoning oil fortunes that were being extracted out of there, as well as geopolitical trade routes, Suez Canal, very important, as well as to oppose other empires like the Ottoman Empire, the Soviet Empire, to basically wrestle control away so they can't get of Iran's oil riches, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the story of the imperial side. But over time, and through that patronage, Israel increased its military strength. It increased its financial and technological prowess, and it also acquired nuclear weapons. That was also a big turning point. When Israel acquired nuclear weapons, it could effectively hold the region and the Western powers hostage. And that was done mainly with the French and the United States. Okay, their undeclared nuclear arsenal of 300-odd warheads. So what's happened now is because of the extreme ethno-nationalist, ethno-religious, ethnic cleansing, genocidal, pure racial religious state objectives of the hard right in Israel coming to fruition in its final stages, it's then reawakened the world as to what this entity actually is. And now it's becoming a liability for the West. Israel is no longer an asset for the West. Look at all the capital that's pouring into the Gulf. Look at all the investment that the Gulf is pledging for the West. None of that can happen if Israel is determined to kill Arabs at an unprecedented rate, to ethnically cleanse and displace whole populations and create a blight on the region for forever historically. It's just there's no future for Israel anymore. So they're done. As well, oil, Middle Eastern oil isn't the most important and crucial commodity on the planet. So Israel's utility is no longer a top priority for the major powers of the world. It's now become a huge liability, a huge risk to stability, financial stability, trade, peace, harmony. And they talk about normalization between Israel and the Gulf states. The real normalization that the powers in Europe and in the multipolar, including the BRICS setup, are looking for normalization with the Middle East. Normalization with the Middle East. And Israel stands in the way of this, because Israel's vision is greater Israel, where they dominate, and they're going to take a part of Syria, part of Jordan, part of Saudi Arabia, part of Egypt, all of Lebanon. That's Israel's vision for the future. And they've pledged that they're going to do this even if it takes the next 100 years. They're going to do it. So that's at odds with everybody else in the region, ultimately. And so they've grown out of control. You could say it's like It's the tail wagging the dog, but the dog has been on steroids for 50 years and is threatening the entire neighborhood at this point. The owner is pretty much on his back heels. And in this sense, I think Trump is a really weak president because he's completely owned, completely controlled. He's pretending that he is an alpha male in control. He doesn't make policy. He blames everybody if anything goes wrong. And he doesn't want to own anything. He's got Steve Witkoff, who is embedded by Israel. Steve Witkoff was put there, not by Trump. How come you never heard of Steve Witkoff before January of 2025? Israel embedded him. He works for the Israelis. He is there to achieve Israeli objectives, not American objectives. And that is evidenced by the fact that look how all the negotiations are going. They're not going well for anybody, but they're sort of going well for Israel. For whatever their goal is of emptying Gaza and, ethnically cleansing, pushing them out, and then killing whoever's left. Witkoff has basically shepherded that whole process up until this point, when the United States was the only world superpower that could have stopped that from happening. And they chose not to and are giving a lot of lame excuses. This whole Trump foreign policy pantomime is going to go down in history as one of the biggest frauds, political frauds ever. And World War III will be laid at the feet of Donald Trump. And trust me, his supporters will be saying he's a peace president right up until the last hour of humanity. Yeah. That's how dangerous this president, because he's not in charge. Donald Trump is not in charge. He doesn't make policy. He's got a very small and weak team around him who work for other people. That's the reality of this president. And it's so, so dangerous.
So I agree with the pantomime thing, whether it's on Russia, whether it's on Iran, or whether it's on Gaza. And at this point, I don't know what MAGA is talking about when they're claiming he is a peace president. He's an American president that is working for the interests of certain interests. And whether it's a tail wagging the dog wagging the tail, I accept your point that it's not exactly one or the other. It's a bit of both. Fair enough. I think that's cheating a little bit with the argument, but I understand the argument that they've fused to such a degree where the way that they behave and the way they act is effectively as if these are one policy that is being enacted, as if it's in our best interests, or as if these things are exactly equal, as if whatever is good for Israel is good for the US and vice versa. It's not that way. What is in Israel's best interest is not necessarily in the United States' best interest. And I agree with you. It's come counterproductive to any notion of America. They have policy documents that point out for MAGA, just in case they weren't aware of this, which path to Persia. And in the documents, they talk about exactly what Donald Trump is doing now. Pretend you're having negotiations. Pretend as if you're doing your best thing for peace. We did this exact same thing in Iraq, right? Oh, there are weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. We're going to try to get a deal. So we're going to send Scott Ritter over to check the sites. And Ritter realized, wait a minute, they're sending me over here to start a war, not prevent a war. That's Witkoff's job, to start a war, not prevent a war. They're asking Iran for something that was always off the table, that was never part of the negotiations. And Donald Trump continuously escalated and could never even come to any conclusion about what he actually wanted in negotiations. Imagine that. You and I sit down to negotiate something and you can never tell me, or I can never tell you exactly what I want. That is what Trump was doing. And so now he's pretending as if, oh my God, we have no control over Israel. In the documents, they make it very clear, this part. It says the United States would encourage and perhaps even assist Israel in conducting an attack or strikes themselves, and with the notion of plausible deniability, because after all, we never told them to do it. We were trying to negotiate in good faith, quote unquote. And oh my God, look at what Israel did. I strongly suspect that Israel and the US is going to run into a buzzsaw on this if and when they actually go with these strikes. Speaking about Witkoff, I'm glad you brought up Witkoff. So this is Witkoff at a meeting getting an applause, apparently, standing ovation by head of Mossad. Listen to what he says here. If I can play it.
This is where I ad lib. I get off the teleprompter and I say, I wish my 93-year-old Jewish mom from the Bronx was here because Yossi Cohen, the ex-head of the Mossad, just clapped for me. A nuclear Iran represents an existential threat to Israel, as does an Iran with a large amount of missiles. That is as big an existential threat as the nuclear threat. And this is an existential threat to the United States and the free world and the entire GCC. We must stand. We must.
Think about that. He's saying this when Israel has gone on a genocidal spree, killing, raping, destroying pretty much anything in its path, invading its neighbors left and right, trying to either kill or expel all of these people from the region, and has nukes.
Yeah.
And I would wager to you, part of the reason that Iran hasn't done True Promise 3 in retaliation or in response is because they're concerned that Israel has nukes and that these goofballs are willing to go to nuclear war.
And that they have the backing of the United States of
And
America
the
to do
backing of
that.
the U.S. That's
That's
right.
the difference. They're not an independent actor. They have the full backing of the United States, whether they do anything right or wrong. It doesn't matter. America is pledged its support. It's been purchased. Every one of our congressmen and senators have been bought, except for Thomas Massey and a few others, maybe
Paul.
Rashida Tlaib and a couple of others I could probably count on one hand, okay,
Yeah.
out of our whole legislature. That's the decrepit, sad, sorry state of United States, quote, democracy in 2025. And this is what you get. This is what you get. You get a foreign government picking the cabinet of a president that's been bought and paid for by that same foreign government, that are now advocating with those embedded cabinet people who work for the foreign government effectively. They were pre-selected by a foreign lobby. They're now dictating policy that will lead to World War III. If not, lay the region in waste with hundreds of thousands, millions of people dead. Again, okay? And the last Iraq war, let's not forget who was the main advocate for the last Iraq war. It was Benjamin Netanyahu, came to lobby our legislature, saying that we must remove Saddam Hussein and democracy will flower in the region after we get rid of this evil dictator, and Israel will feel safer. And here we are all those years later, and what good did that do? Behind every bad policy, who sabotaged the Oslo Accords and Yitzhak Rabin? Benjamin Netanyahu, the same evil, criminal, psychopath that is in charge, declared himself leader for life in Israel, that is genociding the native Palestinian population, okay? The native Palestinian population being killed and ethnically cleansed, and they're open about it. And nobody in Washington has the balls or the spine to stand up and say, that's not right, stop it. Instead, we have to, rely on activists and people in 60-foot sailboats to bring attention to the issue, because our leaders in Europe and in the United States are completely bought and paid for and total cowards. And they're all LARPing as Christians. Oh, I'm a Christian.
I know.
That part, we could do a whole podcast on the pseudo-Christianity rhetoric and virtue signaling that you get from all these people as Israel eviscerates historic Christian churches, ancient churches, and holy sites in and around Gaza and the West Bank, and abuses Christian pilgrims on a daily basis, and has killed thousands of Christians. Over the duration of this conflict since 1945, how many Christians have been killed, displaced, injured, maimed, or made homeless by the Israeli settler colonial project? Too many to count. But those don't count in this conversation as far as America goes, because in America, the rule in America is ignorance is bliss. That is the main rule when it comes to hard issues in today's United States. Ignorance is bliss. I don't know about it. Oh, I haven't heard about that. Maybe I'll look into that. Let me tell my aide, can you look that up for, I want to know about that. And then on they go to the next press conference. On they go to the next interview on CNN or MSNBC, totally oblivious.
Never hearing about it.
And repeating the same lines. You know, the thing about Witkoff, you know, if you're the de facto Secretary of State of a country like the United States, you can't go giving speeches to a partisan lobby in your country, to a foreign lobby, and clearly taking the side while you're actively involved in negotiations with countries that are and people that are being threatened with annihilation by that foreign country. You disqualified yourself. You can't call yourself an envoy or a diplomat. You're a fraud. You're a fraud. You're dangerous. You're representing the interests of a criminal organization that is hell-bent on genocide, a Holocaust, ethnic cleansing, and starting a third world war, doing a preemptive nuclear strike with undeclared nuclear weapons against a country that is completely open to talks and negotiations and that doesn't have nuclear weapons, according to our CIA. So if our CIA, Tulsi Gabbard, where is she? She's quiet. She's quiet as a mouse. Quiet as a mouse. There is no evidence that Iran has nuclear weapons, but they're willing to mount a preemptive strike, a nuclear strike against Iran in order to, because they allege or they might have nuclear weapons. And our DNI has nothing to say. Instead, Tulsi Gabbard's tweeting out Trump tariff deals with China. Why would the head of Director of National Intelligence be doing White House PR fodder for tariff policy? Maybe, Tulsi, you should be briefing the president about the dangers of Ukraine hitting Russian long-range nuclear triad deterrent bombers with drones 2 weeks ago. Maybe you should spend your time briefing the president about the risks of that, rather than putting out stupid tweets about tariffs, doing PR for the president. It is so inappropriate, so unprofessional, but it shows you what a circus this administration is. The incompetence on top of just the buffoonery, and then the danger of it is that Donald Trump is not in charge of anything unless he grew a pair, stepped up, or some other world leader could grow a pair and step up and stop this, because we are careening down a very dangerous path globally because of the United States and Israel. Nobody else. These are the
I'm inclined to believe he agrees.
most belligerent parties on the planet. These two.
Yeah, I'm inclined to believe he agrees. I know people. There's been this argument that Donald Trump is somehow out to lunch on this stuff. I think Donald Trump is perfectly aware of the attack that took place on the nuclear triad and the terrorist attacks that the UK has been working with Ukraine to employ. Just like I think Donald Trump is perfectly aware of what is taking place in Israel right now. Meaning, I may not know what is in his mind, fair enough, but Trump is the one who made the threats. I'm going to do these attacks. Trump is the one that picked the cabinet members, even if he was pushed to do so by a foreign government. So what? He's the president. He's the one who is accountable at the end of the day, right? He chose these people, these lunatics, to put around him, these Zionists and whack jobs, in regards to U.S. policy, and even in the Gaza thing, where he'd be like, "Oh, the people are dying," but he's saying that purely as this kind of virtue signaling to try to justify an argument of ethnically cleansing the region.
It's performative.
It is.
Trump does the same thing. He did it with Gaza. Oh, there's too many people dying. Who would want to live in a place like that? He leaves out the key point, Donald, is that those are U.S. bombs and U.S. F-16s and U.S. radar and U.S. satellite intel who've made that unlivable in Gaza with the full political cover and backing and support of a genocidal Israeli regime, government. Okay, that's the United States. That's you. It's not Biden. It's not Biden. You own it now. Ukraine, so much death, says Trump. Virtue signaling. Oh, we need to stop the killing. Stop the killing. Okay, who's providing all the weapons that have accelerated and escalated this conflict since 2014? Who was the president between 2016 and 2020 that escalated arms shipments to Ukraine to bring the conflict to boil? That was Donald Trump 1.0. But yet
Yep.
his supporters will sit there. No new wars under Trump. No, you accelerated the Ukrainian war. You kept it with the Yemen war. You put troops on the ground in Syria to create the incredible cauldron that it became. Okay. So to say Donald Trump, there was no new wars under Trump's first term is a patent lie and a complete whitewashing of history. This Trump term, definitely plenty of war in the first 100 days. And listen, you need to look at it this way. Any bomb that's dropped on Gaza, any landmine, any snipers taking out Palestinian children on a daily basis, okay? Any hospitals that have been bombed by the maniacal Israeli forces, that's not Israel doing it. That's every bit of kit, practically everything that makes a difference is coming from the United States. It's American. America is a co-belligerent. But they've been able to pull off this kind of performance where they're appearing to be on the outskirts of it, like they do in Ukraine. Oh, we're just here to break up the fight between this neighborhood fight between these Russians and Ukrainians just can't get along. That's dumb enough of a narrative that most Americans will buy that. Okay? It's dumb enough. But the rest of the world, maybe not so much. Britain and the US, yes. Germany, half the people are completely gone. And a lot of parts of Europe as well. They've convinced themselves that that's the case. No, the U.S. is the co-belligerent. The key co-belligerent is the United States in the Ukraine war. So how can you go to negotiations when you are attacking Russia, a nuclear power, UN Security Council? You're attacking their nuclear deterrent. Would the U.S. go to a negotiation table after that? No, they wouldn't. They would basically eviscerate their opponent. And
Yes.
they would take out their leadership as well. Ditto with Israel, okay? So Russia's showing clemency, Russia's showing restraint, Russia's showing patience, a willingness to talk. They know they're dealing with sociopaths, as your previous guest pointed out. You know what you're dealing with the U.S., complete sociopaths who have a very dim view of the world and a blurry view of history and zero understanding or appreciation for geography. Okay, so that's what you're dealing with, okay? And Steve Witkoff, back to him. So he's failing. He totally failed with Gaza. Total fail, a L. He totally failed with the Ukraine negotiations. Total failure. Did nothing. And Iran nuclear negotiations, failure. If you send him to China, go do the Taiwan one now, Steve. So there's nothing to say is successful there. It's all fair. It's all performative.
Exactly.
Because Trump isn't running policy. Israel is running policy. Because they selected all of the foreign policy team. What surprise, surprise. How did you think it was going to go?
You said something. You said Israel is done and that it has outlived its usefulness. What do you mean by that, though? I mean, Europe seems to be completely obsequious also. Europe is...
They are, but, okay, for instance, Spain has sanctioned Israel on arms. Mm-hmm. The UK is gingerly and slowly having to do it because of the public pressure and the embarrassment of it. So they're starting to restrict some arms shipments. And listen, there's a scandal in France on French arms to Israel that's already breaking this week. It's huge. Yep. It has the potential to severely damage the Macron government. Although Macron is like you grease him up and he's like a pig at the state fair. He'll find a way out of it. But Belgium restricting and sanctioning. And so they're starting to sanction. Italy will be not far behind. So Europe is pivoting away from Israel. They are complicit. They are guilty for their initial support. But the lobby has penetrated many of these European countries. France is completely run by foreign policy. Israel have a huge stronghold over a lot of French foreign policy. And in the UK and Britain, it's almost like the United States with just less cash. They don't have to put as much money into the UK because they willingly do it. But Germany as well, very much under the thumb. All these European countries. So America's financed all of that lobbying operation. And listen, Israel sends IDF into the European Parliament in Brussels and lobbies the EU directly. That Israeli military personnel are able to sit in meetings to lobby the EU for support, yeah, and foreign policy. That's a scandal. That was also, we also broke that story at 21st Century Wire. We didn't break it. We just basically dredged up what other people have reported and gave it extra amplification. But it just shows you, it's not just America, Canada, Australia, you know, the entire Anglosphere and the Western world, they're completely, they're in there. Yeah. And that's what you get. So Wickoff, you noticed in that speech, he said, and now he's added another, Israel's not happy.
World.
They want to start adding stuff. This is what they do. They add things. Missiles. It's not just the nukes. No, they shouldn't be allowed to have missiles.
See, that's what I mean.
Here we go. Here we go.
I mean.
That's the number one prize. So so Iran's supposed to be defenseless, pledge allegiance to Israel and the United States, take away all their defense. Right? Is that seems to be the arrangement?
That's what they want. That's what I mean. They could never nail down exactly what they wanted. They were all over the place.
Who is Israel to dictate terms when they've eviscerated? They just slaughtered 100,000 people. According to a British peer-reviewed journal, the true number as of a year ago was 186,000 dead.
It's more than that. It has to be more than that.
Way more than that. You look at the population drop. And so me saying that, say, oh, you're lying, you're Hamas propaganda. You know, I could swear right now and to tell them where to go. But it's so ridiculous. So people are still captured by this propaganda in the face of the almost ungodly horrors of our generation, that it really shows you the level that certain people's characters have sunk to, and just the level of brainwashing that is taking place because of our politicians have been reiterating these talking points coming out of the Israeli camp. And the media has been repeating them as well, that you can't believe the Gaza Ministry of Health because they're run by Hamas, okay? That it is so craven and it is so mendacious, the way people have been trained to think, that they'd take all that nonsense on board just to justify not having to react or do anything about people being slaughtered right in front of their face. And that's what it comes down to. And that's a terrible indictment of the Western society, okay, our Western political system, and Western civilization, full stop. Okay.
Agreed.
Let's just look at the 20th century. I mean, how did Western civilization do? Oh, in the 19th century.
Yeah.
You know, it gave us a lot of technological breakthroughs, but it also, you know, a lot of holocausts in the last 200 years. You know, so you know, I'm not going to worship at the altar of Western civilization and the sort of Western chauvinism, which is what a lot of people are doing now. And Israel promotes that in the West. They promote the far right for that reason. They promote the clash of civilizations. They promote hate against Muslims. Okay, Israel and Israeli policy and NATO policy are the biggest drivers of migrant flows into Europe. Yes. Afghanistan, Libya, Syria. List goes on. Yugoslavia. What was that? Who did that? Was that NATO? Yeah, it was 100% NATO. And that drove the whole migrant flow in Europe and further afield, even into the United States, from those specific policies coming from either Israel or NATO. And in ingenious fashion, Israel goes and supports the far right and puts the bogus argument that we're protecting you. You know, we're over here fighting these barbaric Muslims, so they don't come over to you. So you need to support us. And we love Christianity. That's what they say in Israel. In truth, they've done everything against Christianity. They've killed too many Christians. They've backed extremists like Al Qaeda. That's on record. Netanyahu even admitted they're backing ISIS in Gaza. Yep. Okay, and those Islamist extremists, backed by our intelligence services, backed by Israel, have killed so many Christians and Alawites and Yazidis to polarize the region, because what Israel wants is just the Jewish state surrounded by the barbarian Muslim hordes. That's the narrative they want because it justifies exactly what they're doing now. That is the frame. And anybody who can't see that by now, I can't help you. It's kind of obvious.
They just don't want to see it. Some of this stuff is just racist, where they don't accept that these are human beings. Like if you listen to Trump, oh my God, all of these white South Africaners are being genocided as he bombs Yemenis, right? Where he is, I don't know if you've noticed this. We made a DOD video promoting the US military. And in the video is a group of civilians of Yemenis that are celebrating, I think it was Eid Fitr or something like that, one of the holidays, with Trump murdering all of the civilians. He put that in a video and chest thumped it and even celebrated it on Twitter. That's the guy that we're supposed to believe cares so much about these people who are dying across the globe and U.S.
president. Yeah, he's not like Bush. President. It's not like Bush. He's better than Bush.
Yeah, he's a peace president.
If Donald Trump was president in 2000 with 9/11 in Iraq, it would have been worse than Bush. It would have been worse than Bush. I can tell you right now.
Speaking of peace president Donald Trump, when asked about, because again, this is supposedly, according to MAGA, a U.S. president that's working hard to get a deal, despite the fact that Iran is a sovereign country. It can do whatever it wants from my point of view. If it wants to have nukes. In fact, again, I've pointed out, it should have already had nukes by now. North Korea is only there because it has nukes. Iran should have already went through it. They didn't want to do it. They went through the Non-Proliferation Act. All right. The IAEA has come out, and people don't seem to realize this is a coordinated stunt that is taking place. So the IAEA comes out with this. For the first time in 2 decades, they are, the certified board governors said that they are in breach of, let's say, the NPT, Non-Proliferation Treaty, or NPT. Then Iran, thankfully, put out this showing how close the relationship was between the IAEA and Israel, effectively pushing Israeli policy in an organization that was supposed to be independent, and even giving off some of the names of Iranian scientists that Israel promptly murdered. So there's that.
That's right.
And we're supposed to believe, these things are happening separate and distinct from each other. And we're supposed to believe Donald Trump, who's given 80% of Israel's military, bombs, bullets, complete political support in regards to the United Nations Security Council. We went to the ICJ and argued that Israel has a right to starve 2 million people. I'm sorry, it's not even 2.2 million at this point. The last reading was 1.8 million people. Where did those 400,000 people go, right? So peace president Donald Trump in an interview comes out and says this.
I don't have that on screen.
Wait, say that again?
Yeah, I don't see the interview. It's not on screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Okay, here we are.
It was a pleasure. Without discussing anything, look, we had a meeting, a very important meeting, and really talked about many subjects.
Iran, Ukraine,
one of
Russia.
them were, all of that. It's all big topics, especially when you have generals and admirals.
Do you think you're going to be able to stop Iran from enriching its?
I don't know. I did think so, and I'm getting more and more less confident about it. They seem to be delaying, and I think that's a shame. But
you know what's wild to me about these reporters, quote unquote, these stenographers? They never say, "Sir, but Israel has nukes. You don't take issue with Israel having nukes in the region." They never bring that up, right? Or they never point out, well, isn't Iran a sovereign country? Can Iran do what they want? Meaning the framing is always this idea of, well, Iran is trying to get a nuclear weapon. Just one last point before I let you in on this. You have documentation going back for how long have Iran was supposed to get nukes? This is 1984 with Israel, with this massive article talking about Iran is in the final stages of making a nuclear weapon. 40 years ago, they were still pushing this shuck and jive line that they were on the brink of a nuclear weapon. I mean, nobody ever brings that up. Like when they're talking to Trump, when they're talking to these political leaders, they never say, but sir, you've been saying since 1984, at the very least Israel has been saying since 1984 that Iran was trying to get a nuke. Why haven't they got it yet if that's been 40 years? They never bring this stuff up.
Yeah, it's just around the corner. Like 30
Yeah.
years still waiting for
Right.
Godot. It's like Samuel
Right.
Beckett waiting for Godot. It's the same BS that George W. Bush, remember, a smoking gun could become a mushroom cloud
Yep.
kind of thing. It's the same BS, and it's just been repackaged. And the capture, is well pointed out by yourself there. The capture, the International Atomic Energy Agency, and all these agencies are somehow co-opted at some point, penetrated and used. And again, why would Iran want to open its doors to international inspectors with U.S. or Israeli agents than to gather all the names, faces, intelligence, and kill them, and then maybe, who knows, plant bombs in places and do other terrorist attacks? That's all permissible. And you noticed Donald Trump, or the interviewer, how she framed it. That was a softball, and that's not real journalism. I don't know who that was. It was probably Miranda Devine or something. You know, who was great going after Biden in the laptop. You know, that's great. And this is the problem with, and this is a critique coming from the right, okay, just so you know. The problem with Republicans and right-wing partisan journalism, they're great in opposition. Mm-hmm. Fox News will actually do real journalism when they're in opposition, okay? And their comedians are funny, their takes are witty, and so forth. But when they get into power, they're I don't want to insult Kim Jong-un, but it's more like North Korea than the United States.
Yeah.
And just a sycophancy. And so she isn't going to push back on anything because the president's there. And so her job there is to curry favor with the president so she'll get another interview. He'll say, oh, you did a good job, Moran. You treated me well. You didn't get to the nub of any of these important issues, but that doesn't matter. What matters is your career, access to power and money. That's what matters, okay, now that you're in power. But what he's done there is very dangerous. She framed it, oh, you're going to allow them to enrich. Wait, hold on. I thought it was weapons. I thought it was nuclear weapons. Now it's enriched uranium. Now it's not, you can only have a little bit. No, now you can have any enriched uranium. So they're moving the goalposts constantly. Yep. And this is the problem with Trump. He's not a trustworthy negotiations partner, and neither are any of the charlatans that he sends off to, do forward meetings and things like that. They're not trustworthy because they constantly are moving the goalposts. He'll change his mind. He'll say, he'll tweet out something on Friday, tomorrow. He'll say, oh, we've come to an agreement with the Iranians. They're not going to enrich any uranium. And then on Monday, he'll say, no, we're very upset at the Iranians. And then on Wednesday next week, he'll say, oh, we've come to an agreement on 2%. But I'm not happy. We'd like to do more. I'm not happy. I'm kind of happy, but I'm not happy. And then on Friday, it'll be something else. It'll be no. I'm gonna get very angry if we don't get a deal. And I'm trying to keep control of Bibi. He's very angry too. He might just do something. Kind of. This is the complete. Just, I don't know. It turned the United States into a comic strip. That's what Trump has done, okay? Biden was bad. But the problem with Trump, and Trump is as geriatric as Joe Biden is, because the quality of his discourse isn't a whole lot better than Sleepy Joe's. But at least Joe Biden had an excuse. We all knew that he had dementia. Yeah. Yeah. What's Donald Trump's excuse? Is he cognitively in decline, or is he just ignorant? Or is he just completely winging it and actually doesn't know what he's talking about half the time? Because all of those possibilities, it's not a good thing to have as a president of the United States, and not in a situation like we're in today with all of these important balls in the air. He's dropping all of them simultaneously and then playing it off like he's winning. It's the most extraordinary thing.
Before one last thing, what do you think is going to transpire with this? Do you think the attack is going to take place? And two, what do you think is going to happen if there is an attack?
My job is to troubleshoot. That's my job. So I have to assume that if they say they're going to attack, and if they're doing plans to attack, that they're going to attack.
And they're going to attack, right?
But when that attack happens, and what is the catalyst for it? Final catalyst for it? We've seen all the little breadcrumbs leading up to it, the fake WMDs, the documents, the fake reports, the lies. The one I love, which is so retarded, pardon me if that offends anybody, I'm sorry.
It doesn't.
It's
It
not
doesn't.
ableist. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say, but it is. That the Iranian IRGC plotted an assassination against Trump during the campaign. I see all of his surrogates pushing this stupid story, this ridiculous story, like low IQ conspiracy theory. Okay, that's all fodder to get the base behind an attack on Iran. And where is that coming from? It's coming from Israel, and those are all Israeli lobby surrogates pushing that on X and on other social media platforms and in the mainstream media. Okay, fake, totally fake. And the sad thing is, a lot of people, if it's from Team Red, they're going to believe it. It's all Team Blue, Team Red right now in America. It's so polar. Look at the opinion polls. The opinion polls on support is Trump handling the Israel-Palestine situation. Huge disparities across parties and gender on that issue. Massive gender gap and party gap. How is that possible? Because there's only one reality. There's only one set of facts, but you have people believing such different things. How is that possible? Because we are in the most propagandized media environment in the history of the human race.
Agreed.
That's how you get that level of polarization.
Agreed.
And shame on the people that are pushing these lies. You know, what's going to make them happy? They want to see what's...
And you know what's ironic? Part of that propaganda is believing that they have a free and open media. Like
Yeah.
it's built into the propaganda, right? Oh, you have an open media, but these other people, their media is constrained.
Free and
No,
open
you're
to
absolutely
lie,
right.
to make up fake stories. And these are the same people that were screeching about the Democrats putting out fake news during the Biden and in the Hillary campaign. The fake news. Trump does it too. The fake news. He's the fake news. His media platform's called Truth Social, and more lies go out on Truth Social. I mean, it's comical. How can these people he can't be taken seriously?
That's what I mean. It's built into it. Truth Social, as he lies.
What kind of, who would hijack a word like the truth and like name your platform? Because you know that truth is such a subjective thing. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm talking on intellectual levels here that are really undergraduate philosophy. But I'm not a PhD in this stuff, epistemological research frameworks and so forth. But I'm like, even I learned that as a freshman in college. What did Donald Trump learn in college? That's a good question.
Did he even go to college? I don't even know if Trump went to
Apparently
college.
he did.
If he
Went to the
did,
Wharton. Apparently he went to the Wharton Business School, we're told.
I don't
But
think he learned much. He
I don't
bankrupted
think
how many businesses?
I don't think he read any humanities, much less Plato's Republic or John Locke or John Stuart Mill. I don't think he read any of that.
No.
Don't think he read any history either. He's profoundly disinterested in everything other than himself and his headlines. And that's a critique coming from the right. I'm sorry, but you know, the sycophancy's over. He got a lot of goodwill. He came on the magic carpet of goodwill in January. Much of it deserved, okay, for what he went through and what was put through. But right now, he has basically used up all of that goodwill because he is pushing hard towards a third world war.
And by the way, I was
on
open.
multiple fronts. Yeah, go ahead.
I was open. I am not a fan of Trump. I never claimed to be, but I was open to see what he did. I wasn't just like the John
many
Wayne
were.
thing. He's my president. I hope he does well. I was there.
Most people are the same, Jamal. Most
Yeah.
people are the same.
But at the point where you failed on a massive effing level, and I can't even say failed because I don't even believe he was being honest in any of these negotiations. So,
No, and you know, the sad thing is, and again, this is a critique coming from a Christian conservative position, is Donald Trump doesn't regard Palestinians as equal human beings to Jewish Israelis, clearly, because if he did, he wouldn't make the comments or put some of the insulting things that he put out on social media and the disgusting videos of him having margaritas on the beach in Gaza.
Yeah.
with bearded belly dancers. It's really disgusting, lowbrow
Well,
stuff.
I don't even
like
think
I mean, even if it wasn't him, it was the official account of the president.
Yeah.
You know, so he's responsible for that. Of course, he's not going to apologize for any of that. But just look at the policy. He's happy with the genocide and ethnic cleansing of the native population by European settlers, because that's what
Yes.
it is. You know, that the Israeli colonial settler project is a European project. It's a
Atheistic
Western
Jews.
project. It's outsourcing a European problem. How Europeans saw it, including the Germans, but the Germans weren't alone. The British were the sort of progenitors of that project, as were other European countries signed on to it. And America, from Woodrow Wilson right up to the creation of the State of Israel, backed it as well. Okay? And so they outsourced a problem that Europe had. Europe's got inherent problems with all sorts of things. Tribalism, racism. Europe has a bad habit of getting into sectarian wars with each other, with other European tribes, and slaughtering them by the hundreds of thousands. They have this bad habit that they've accrued over history. And they basically outsource that to the Middle East. So the Arabs living there say, now you're going to deal with this, our problem, and we're going to back the militarization of these colonial settlers, and we're going to fund them to the hilt, and we're going to get rid of you natives. And because that's how colonialism works. And that's, you can explain it all you want. It has nothing to do with the Bible.
Nope.
It has nothing to do with God promised this land or that land. It is a British and European colonial settler creation project. Okay? Where else in the world would anyone accept a pure religious or pure ethno state? Where? It doesn't exist. So why should the native Arab or Palestinian population have to not only accept it, but give their lives for it, be made homeless for generations for it? What did they do? How were they involved in World War II and World War I?
Europe's Holocaust. Yeah.
It doesn't
It's
make
like they
any
had to
sense.
pay for Europe's Holocaust.
Any honest person is going to look at that in a historical context and say, what is happening now in the Holy Land is wrong. It's wrong. And the UN agrees. Every other major, honest, objective body agrees. There's a whole raft of legislation which the United States and the Trump administration, Israel, are trying to nullify, including international institutions, courts, treaties, resolutions, declarations of human rights. They're trying to nullify and discredit all of it in order to justify the Holocaust, which is happening now. It's as simple as that.
Patrick, you're fantastic. I always say there's no such thing as international law. I'm never a believer of international law because there's no Leviathan in the international community. After the Gulf War, I was like, oh, there's no such thing. If the ICC looks at that and you get 1 million people that George Bush effectively wiped off the face of the earth, ends up creating ISIS that created a path of destruction. And at this point, I think it's clear that this is somewhat of a U.S. either creation or at the very least we use it to our own devices. And no one else does anything?
Well, listen.
Doesn't exist.
On that point, and we can finish on that. Just because one country undermines something and doesn't observe something, and that happens to be the most powerful, well-armed country, doesn't mean that the system itself doesn't have utility, because you need some resolution dispute system and consensus system and some ability to negate huge discrepancies in terms of people taking unfair advantage on a number of things, including trade, foreign policy, borders. So international law, every other country follows it. But the U.S. and Israel and Britain don't. So
very quick, I agree that it has utility. But if you get 3 or 4 actors that don't need to follow it, then it doesn't exist. Then you have something.
But it does exist. If you took away, if you took the United Nations away now, and you said no international law applies, what kind of chaos would you see happen around this?
The same
planet?
chaos you have now.
No, it would be much more. It'll be much more. You know, look at the Russian, study the Russian Federation. Look at their constitution. Look at their foreign policy. Everything is codified in international law. They're so pragmatic and deliberate in their legalese, because everything they do, and you notice this, and those who study Russian foreign policy will tell you, it's all aligned and exactly codified to conform with international law. That's the irony of this conversation about evil Putin this, evil Putin that. Russia's playing by the rules. You know who else plays by the rules? China. Yeah. China plays by the rules. India plays by the rules. So for the most part, all these countries are playing by the rules. The problem isn't them. And the problem isn't the international system. As imperfect as it is, it's always a work in progress, just like the American democratic system is a work in progress, should be anyway. It's not perfect, but it's a work in progress. But the problem isn't the system. The problem is those who are undermining it intentionally and using their might, using their unfair advantage, their leverage, their coercive blackmail measures, their international racketeering operation in order to sideline, to nullify, to neutralize international law.
Would you agree with me that if a law can't be defended, then it doesn't exist?
It depends. That goes for anything, though. You know, you can't live in a society in America without some laws. You need some order.
No. I'm not saying that I'm against the law. I'm saying if a law can't be defended, if I say you have to pick up after your dog here, but nobody can defend that law, does that law really exist?
Still does, because a lot of people do things voluntarily and in mutual agreements and consensus. That happens every day in the international system, every day. There's degrees to which people will, and the type of things people will voluntarily comply out of mutual interest and to avoid conflict. There's a whole bevy of things that fall into that category that happen on a minute-by-minute basis.
Yeah.
Okay, but the problem is the conventions after World War II, like for instance, I'll give you a wild one. This is so far out. The Genocide Convention. I mean, what was that institution about? Well, to prevent the crime of crimes.
Right.
The ultimate crimes. The whole basis of the international system is to prevent that. And you see the exact same usual suspects that are basically trying to prevent that legacy from being realized in the present day, which is to prevent a Holocaust. So from that point of view, I think this is more of a failure of Western civilization, an inability to self-reflect, to hold itself to account, to restrain its bad actors, and culturally I think there is a level of chauvinism in the West that I think has become very carcinogenic to the international system. And I see that ramping up now. This makes me very concerned. And the rhetoric is getting more ridiculous in the United States. You look at what, quote, influencers are putting out on their social media, just lies upon lies, hyperbole, crazy racist statements and so forth. So, and meanwhile, Israel will say, that's not a problem. No, what's a problem is anti-Semitism. You know, this is the number one problem of the planet. It's not, okay? There's no bigger driver of anti-Semitism, if you want to define it in the narrow terms, which the Israeli lobby does, then there's no bigger driver of anti-Semitism than the state of Israel, full stop. And the lobby that's trying to shut down people, trying to hold them to account. That is the biggest driver of anti-Semitism in 2025.
Patrick Henningsen, fantastic breakdown, man. Thank you for this. Geopolitical analyst, journalist, host of SundayWire.com, creator of the 21st Century Wire, critic of mainstream media propaganda. Thank you for this, Patrick. You have a good one, man. You be safe, okay?
You too.
Thank you. Fantastic breakdown by Patrick. He always is a great guest, though. Shout out to him. Definitely check out his outfit, Sunday Wire, 21st Century Wire. Both are really, really good. I go there for stories all the time because you're always in the lookout for what do you want to follow, what do you want to cover. And it is a really good source of stories and information. Cradle, another one. DD GeoPolitics, another really good one. Both of them have their finger on the pulse. Lord Beto, what is it, Babo? I don't think he has an outlet, but he does God's work on Twitter. I have to give him a shout out. He does really great work in putting out stories, putting out videos, putting out those things. It's funny how you get so used to people doing it. I think Sarah was like, I'm glad that I'm here for your pleasure. It's like, okay, thank you. I appreciate that. But it's funny and yet true on some level, right? By the way, she is going to be here at 9:30, so definitely stick around for her. I appreciate what Patrick is saying there, but there is a truism that I run with that just reality. Selective justice is not justice. Meaning, if you have a law in the United States that says anything over 60 is speeding, and every white person that passes it gets a speeding ticket or gets a warning, and every black person gets a ticket, is it really a law? I hope you get what I mean, right? Or is it something that's selective for a certain group or people or population? And if you're talking about international law, you're talking about something without a Leviathan. There is no thing over top of something else. You have individual states. Those individual states have police forces, militaries, etc. And while the international community may do something about Timbuktu, if Timbuktu gets honorary, or even the Philippines, if the Philippines gets honorary, what is it going to do about the US? Huh? What do you do about that? And can you really call it a law if one of the countries, two of the countries, five of the countries can just bucket? It is true that Russia tries to follow international law in the way that they operate. They operate in very legalist means. It's true, even the same thing may be true with China. Hell, it may even be true with India. But any of those countries could say F off and do their own thing. And the world community wouldn't be able to do squat about it. Is that a law? Is what I'm asking. That's what I'm getting at. If it's optional, how is it a law? And if it's optional for some, but others have to follow it because they don't necessarily have the power to throw it off in the way that these larger countries, these Western chauvinist countries would do. Can we really call it a law? Or can we call it, we would hope that you follow this. Please follow this provision. It's in everybody's best interest. I don't know. I don't ascribe to this notion of international law. I accept that they wrote things down. I accept that those things are in the book somewhere. I accept that weaker countries that may not have a choice would have to follow them. That I accept. But laws are backed by force. What they put down is just suggestions. There's a difference in those things. And the fact that we're seeing Israel committed genocide right now, the fact that we're seeing an unprovoked attack that most likely will take place against Iran, these are indications that these are suggestions that can be blown off at any particular moment, the moment that you have the right country backing you and pushing off those suggestions. The US, Israel, Britain, France, hell, I'd even go with Germany, all of these countries, there's a Western point of view that is associated with it. Is it legal to overthrow the government of a democratic country? Is that legal under international law? I would wager that it's not. No. No issue doing it to Ukraine. No issue filling it with weapons. No issue filling the airspace with propaganda to get your own populations into this nonsense belief set that, oh my God, Russia is the aggressor and all this other stuff. None of those things were under law. All of those things were done by the West in a heartbeat. These institutions that we call institutions are typically captured spaces by Western interests that use those institutions to go after and settle political, let's say political debts, to go after people for political reasons, not because it's being an honest arbiter in the way that it operates. And they devalue the credibility of those institutions. The IAEA know goddamn well that shouldn't have been working tandem, hand in hand with Israelis. Full stop. Full stop. And yet, is it shocking to you that governments of the West who are supporting its colony in the Middle East wouldn't be doing that? If you are shocked, you are not paying attention. If you're shocked, you haven't been paying attention. My point is these institutions discredit themselves by virtue of, you must clean up after your pets. And just under the sign, the dog is going to the bathroom. Okay. Or dog catcher here. And you have dogs running rampant. Okay. Either that dog catcher is not that good at his job, or there's certain dogs that just can run free without the dog catcher getting involved. Both of those situations are discrediting to the dog catcher institution. I'm saying that it's true for the IAEA. I'm saying that it's true for the ICC. The idea that you're going to go with this notion that taking kids out of a war zone is kidnapping kids is just absurd. It's absurd. And yet you allow a genocide to take place over the course of a year or a year and a half where they have slaughtered, burned children alive. And you have just sat there and watched with your thumb in your ass, not doing anything about it. The idea that the US can pass and attack the Hague Act, we will attack the Hague if indeed they find any of our people committing some kind of crime. That's outrageous. And yet, your institution doesn't have the teeth that it needs to do what it's supposed to do. And it's functioning only by the consent of genocidal nations. So what does it mean for your institution? And why should I give it the credibility that you breathlessly claim that it has? As I told the people in the ICC, your job was to go after African dictators, not to go after countries that we like or countries that we have relationships with. That is the thought behind the ICC. You're not supposed to go after us. When we commit our crimes, when we commit our genocides, when we back genocidal nations, you're not supposed to do that. That's not what you're supposed to do. That African rando over there, that guy is the guy you're supposed to go after. So, yeah, all things being equal, you would think that international law would be a decent idea. But if there's no Leviathan, how do you have international law? And again, any government presents its own issues, right? Any bureaucracy. Look at the European Union. You come up with a bureaucracy over top of European states. Okay, sounds good. So the sovereignty of the individual states is subjugated to the higher authority that's in Brussels. Okay, you may accept that if you think you have an honest arbiter in Brussels. But what ends up happening? Well, we need all of you to back NATO expansion. We need all of you, even against democracies coming out saying, we don't want this. We don't like this. We don't like the fact that you're backing this country where you're pushing us closer to the brink of war. So you get a candidate in Romania, and what do? They shut down the elections in Romania. You get a situation in France where it looks like the National Rally will most likely win the election coming up. And what do? You get them taking Le Pen off the chessboard because she had a better chance of winning that race. What do you get in Germany? You get the Alternative for Deutschland, who is a strong second place at this point. And you get them criminalizing the organization, claiming that they're supporting of Nazis, as the mayor's government support Nazis in Israel and in Ukraine. It's comedic if it wasn't so disgusting in the way it is operating. The point that I'm making here is the moment that you put a government over top of another government, you get the subjugation of the subordinate government. It doesn't matter what you write in the law. It doesn't matter what you say that the powers of this particular entity are. Unless you get honesty, goodwill, ethics, morality, all of these things built into the process, honest actors, then you're going to get an overreach of that government. And I'm saying that is why governments like the US would never accept a secondary body over top of it that will be able to impinge our movements from our point of view, where superpower we get to do what we want. And you hear that from some commentators. Iran is Iran, the US is the US, we can do what we want. And so if we tell them what to do, then they should do what we want them to do. No, that did not come out of John Bolton, even though the person is in an independent media space. The point that I'm making is that in the sense of Europe, they're squashing any notion of liberal order for their own militaristic war aims. So journalists, the woman in Estonia, for example, she's getting put in prison, I believe, 14 years for journalism. For journalism, no bullshit. She wrote under, I think she was writing for either Sputnik or RT, I forget which one. She was writing under like a pseudonym or something like that. And they said she was committing treason. And they put that woman in jail for over a decade. The other people who were writing, who they call propagandists, who they kicked out of Europe, which is astonishing to even think about. How do you kick somebody out of a continent or something pretending to be a continent? And yet they did. They got rid of them. We don't like the fact that you're reporting, and we don't like your reporting. You're not backing us in regards to our propaganda that we're putting out. And because you're not backing our propaganda, we don't want you coming back into Europe and debanking them on top of doing that. There are several journalists that used to work for either RT or Sputnik that had to literally leave Europe because they were effectively being attacked. Karen Kneisel, for example, foreign minister for Austria, she doesn't live in Europe anymore. She has to live in Russia because in Europe, they were going after her because she apparently danced at Putin's wedding, or Putin danced at her wedding or something like that. I hope you get my point. This is not rational, liberal Europe. It's showing who it is by virtue of what it does. And I'm saying that would be true if it's just Europe. It is true with the US, and it is true with the international order that claims itself to be laws governing the world. International law doesn't exist. I agree there are things that are written down, but do people have to follow them? No, it's more like international suggestions. At least that's my point of view. But I do appreciate the argument. I even agree with them that, you have a genocide convention for a reason. When they said never again, all things have been equal, you would think, never again. And yet, here we are. And in the same way they were able to devalue Jews, like these aren't really people, these are rats, these are blah, 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 just making stuff up, knowing full well that these are human beings and acting like that's not the case. Europe, racist fucking Europe right now, and racist fucking America is doing the exact same thing right now with devaluing the lives of the Palestinians, acting as if they're not real human beings. Oh, they're a dispensable class of people. How else can you justify a policy like this if you don't consider them? If you consider them human beings, how do you justify this? Right? How do you justify it? You can't, is my point. If you don't consider them human beings, when Donald Trump is murdering Yemenis at a religious festival, does he consider those people? Do he consider those people human beings? I would say he doesn't. When Donald Trump is screaming about the white South Africaners and the genocide that's happening in South Africa, okay, that tells me where your mind is. That tells me where your mind is. That tells me where you are on the scale. Like, you can say something, I don't know what it means to you. If I line it up with reality and say, okay, this is reality and this is the shit that person said, okay, it gives me a gauge of where they are in response to reality. And if you're telling me that Israel has just murdered hundreds of thousands of people, because the last census I saw, it was like 1.8 million Palestinians. Okay, that number started off at 2.2 million. That is 400,000 dead Palestinians. Even if I cut that in half, you're at 200,000. Fair enough, let's go 200,000. That is an astonishing number of people that you've murdered over the course of the last year and a half. The overwhelming majority of which being women and children, just wiped off the face of the earth. And if you ask Israelis, 69% says all of them are guilty. Every man, woman, child, infant, baby, zygote, all of them are open to be killed. 69% of Israelis agree with that. So this is not a Netanyahu issue. This is a country, settler colonial country, that we back to the tune of 80%, that we protect in their vile, disgusting, fascist orientation, and that we allow to commit this genocide. It is not Israel doing this by itself. The United States is standing there right there, arm in arm with it, just like the European capitals standing there arm in arm. What I disagree with Patrick on, honestly, in that interview, because I agree with pretty much everything else he said, is that Europe is changing. Europe is not changing anything. Look, Joe Biden, during his term, spent 2 years screaming and bitching in the press about Netanyahu. Oh my God, our hands are just tied. Oh my God, Israel is an independent country and it's just doing this and it's killing these people. And oh my God, if we could do anything, we would. I'm working tirelessly for a deal. Nonsense. The notion that the US is giving 80% of the resources to Israel, giving it every bullet, every bomb, every political support, defends it in the UN Security Council, meaning Israel doesn't exist without America. Full stop. Israel cannot commit genocide without America. Full stop. Israel cannot wage war and murder and burn women and children alive without America. Full stop. So this notion that Joe Biden was working tirelessly was always bullshit. And he should have always been able to identify that even as he was saying it and even as it was taking place. It shouldn't have required a channel, whatever the hell, in Israel to come out with an expose pointing it out. It was obvious as it was taking place and as it was happening. So nonsense. So when I make this case of saying we are standing there arm in arm with this genocidal, batshit crazy country, I mean it. And this idea that, Donald Trump is pretending to send Wickoff over there and doing it, or that the European leaders are changing their tenor, I don't buy it. I just don't buy it. The fact that Joe Biden used to do the same thing in the media, I'm working tirelessly for a deal. And now you get, a year and a half in, nearly 2 years in, and the European capitals, when they realize, oh my God, it seems that our public have issues with us backing a genocide. Maybe we need to put out a press release. We don't like the fact that they're committing a genocide. Put it in the press. See, we're working tirelessly against a genocide. Look at our press statement. Okay, yeah, I'm supposed to take that as legitimate. I don't. 1,000 times. I don't. It's nonsense. It's every bit as nonsense when Joe Biden was saying it. It's every bit as nonsense now. It's just happening in a European context. The public has gotten wind to the fact that we have been watching this for over a year and a half, and you're putting money into doing this. We don't like you doing it. And so now it becomes a political issue for Europe, just like it was a political issue for Joe Biden. And in the same way that Joe Biden was shucking and jiving for the camera, acting as if he was doing something, the European capitals are shucking and jiving for the camera. The truth is, they're okay with this genocide. They have no issue with it. Their colony of European settlers is expanding into the Middle East. Why would they be against it? Why would they be against it? The U.S. is for it. These people are just like us in the way that the U.S. thinks. We were a settler colonial nation. We expanded all across the United States with a manifest destiny. And we're going to back them because as long as we back them, we also get the benefits of having some level of control over the Middle East, which is what we want. And it's what these European capitals want. If you think otherwise, you are not paying attention. They're for it. They're not against it. They're okay with it. They may put out denials. That is true. But think about how long it has taken them to put out denials. We have watched people get slaughtered and burned alive, women and children, for over nearly 2 years at this point. Keir Starmer had just put out a statement that says, if you don't back my policy on Israel, get the fuck out, which tells you where the UK is on this issue. And yeah, you may get the random bird of Spain who may come out, but that's a rarity. That's not the norm. That is an oddball position. That is not the normal position. Complaints that are coming from these people, I don't care about. I don't care about their complaints. I care about their actions. Let me go to my guest. She's here. Excellent. We are joined with the one, the only Sarah Bils. She is host of DD GeoPolitics, a fantastic media outlet, as I was telling the audience. I've become reliant on some of these things as they pop up because they help with the news. And one guy, Lord Babo, I don't even know if it's a guy. I'm assuming it's a guy. Even him, he does fantastic work in putting out videos, articles, stuff it's I assume that he just spends his day doing it. I don't know if he's like a 90-year-old that just has nothing else to do and just puts it all on social media. And I'm like, great work. Because, there's some outlets out there. What is the thing called Current Report? And I've become very dickish to some of these outlets because they put out nonsense. And it's almost as if the CIA just said, hey, put this out for me. And it's like, okay. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck is this? Like, I've just started getting very derisive towards these outlets. How you doing today? You doing all right?
I'm doing good. Thank you for your high praise. The person, Area, is actually the one who verifies everything. Barut, who was on your show.
Yeah.
He works his butt off. And actually, he yells at me when I don't verify things. So everything on the Twitter is very verified and double checked. So yeah, we take a lot of pride in being accurate, not fast, not always first, but always accurate. And if not, then we never have a problem going back and correcting it. But yes, the fake news under the anti-fake news president, it's out of control. Even yesterday was a great example. There was so much fake news and nothing was even really happening.
Well, so the fake news is out of control on social media. I've not found anything where you guys have fucked up with yet. I still double check just because I would prefer to double check it before I run it.
And let us know if you find something. But yeah, we try really hard. That we made it like a game, like to not get any community notes, and I think we've only had like 2.
Oh, have you? You've had community notes. Oh, that's too funny. Yeah, I haven't seen anything where you guys have fucked up on yet. I always check because I have to, because I need to see primary sources. And so oftentimes you may see me on my Twitter thing says source, exclamation, question mark. I'm being somewhat, again, a little bit dickish. And usually when I do that, I don't believe the story. And I think the person's making this shit up. And I'm like, okay, where did you get this from? Where did you see this? And then they would say, WAPO where?
Yeah, well, that happened yesterday. They put something out. It was actually the Zionists that put it out. And we were like, where is this? And they used WAPO as a source, and nobody could find this stuff anywhere. It's gotten even worse to where they're just citing the mainstream media who they've already discredited thoroughly. And then we can't even find it on the mainstream media. So they're just lying about it. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's really bad.
It's insane. One guy put out, it was like, Iran confirms they have a nuke. It's like, have they? That's news to me. Source. Like, it's too stupid. Like, some of it is so over the top that I'm like, okay, where are you getting? Like, I don't get it. And the thing is, it would be like 50 people retweeted. It's like, are you shitting me? You retweeted this shit. You retweeted this shit.
It's clear that most of these people have jumped on GeoPolitics as like a grift. Yeah, they don't have the background kind of foundational knowledge in it, and they'll just report anything. And you're like, that's not even possible given the conditions that exist. But you would know that if you reported on this. I even posted something the other day because they were all posting, oh, Putin's rushing to the Kremlin. And I'm like, if you didn't, my post literally said, if you hadn't just started reporting on the Ukraine and Russia war and you knew about this war, you would know that this video is from 2023. It's like,
he sleeps in the Kremlin.
Yeah. What are we doing here?
Yeah. He sleeps there. He has I mean, for fuck's sake, they had video, him giving an interview showing where he lays his head at nights. And so the notion that he's rushing back to the Kremlin to get away from, it's like, okay, dude, where have you been? Where have you been?
Even if not, like, common sense tells you the strike was planned. It's clearly a planned strike. Even just looking at it, why would he be rushing anywhere if it's a planned strike? Like, common sense. It's just they don't even have that because they're not reporters, they're not journalists, they're not analysts. They are influencers. That's it. That's all they are.
I guess they're trying to insinuate that Ukraine is waging an attack and Putin is so terrified he's trying to rush to the Kremlin. I don't know what they're trying to insinuate.
Or that the attack wasn't planned and Putin's got to get right back to the Kremlin. And it's just stupid stuff. Like, they don't even know how Russia even
operates.
Yeah, they don't like every country has a personality. You kind of get to know it as you're doing your work. And I'm like, you don't even have that like foundational knowledge to even just. This is what happens when Elon tells you you're the news, I guess. You just say whatever you want and it's the news.
You're the news. It's like, you all love the news.
Yeah, you're all my news now.
Speaking of Elon telling people they're the news. So, okay, I couldn't figure out a segue for that, so I'll run with it. But, give me your take on what is taking place with Iran, Israel, and Trump effectively using Israel as a proxy to attack the US. And by the way, speaking of fake news, that's not isolated to Elon. This is the Washington Post. So the Washington Post, the New York Times, Washington Post, all of these media outlets are doing heavy lifting to try to make it look as if Israel, who gains 80% support from the United States, every child that's burned alive, 80% of that child comes from us. Every bomb that's dropped, every missile that's fired, every bullet that's shot, 80% of it comes from us. And they're trying to act like a country with that much clout and money into the process has nothing to do with that other country, which is amazing to me. So it's right here. In recent months, U.S. intelligence officials have grown increasingly concerned that Israel may choose to strike Iran's nuclear facilities without the consent of the United States. Really? You think they'll do that, huh? So if the U.S. turned around and says, you're on your own, you really think that Netanyahu, that Israel will still be like, fuck it, we're on our own, doing it on our own? They would run out of bombs, missiles, bullets, they would run out of all that shit. I mean, just for the genocide, let alone for something that is an exchange between Iran and Israel. They would get crushed, and they know it. And any plan that they have would entirely depend upon the assistance and the help of the United States. For whatever reason, Washington Post doesn't seem to know that.
Well, here's the thing, and we discussed this thoroughly yesterday. Israel knows fully well that even if they struck tomorrow, the United States has no choice but to get involved. What are they going to do? Say no to their greatest ally? It will rip the country in half right now. Listen, I mean, I don't have to tell you or even our viewers, but between the riots, we can talk about those two if you want, but
yeah,
the riots, the debacles that are happening all over the world, the trade disasters, we have another Boeing disaster today. So between all of that and the tensions rising within the United States, people are stoking racial tensions, violence is upticking, disenchantment and disenfranchisement is growing. If Israel were to strike Iran and the United States decided not to participate, it would rip the country in half. And Netanyahu, oh yes, and Netanyahu knows that. He 100% knows that. He knows that Trump has no choice if he strikes Iran to get involved. He has no choice. He has no choice. None.
The majority of the country doesn't back Israel.
Right, 53%. But the majority of the money backs Israel.
Well, I'm just talking about the country at this point. The majority of the U.S., in fact, is higher than 53%. If you break it down by various demographics, that number goes up to 60, 70%.
Yeah, in some demographics, but overall, 53%, sure.
And then you even get the situation where the overwhelming majority of the country does not want to strike on Iran, meaning they don't want us anywhere near.
Well, we won't be striking. That's the thing. That's how they get around all of it. We didn't do it. We didn't know. We told them not to do it. They sucked us into this. We're obligated.
The public can't be that stupid. They can't be that stupid.
They don't care anymore. They're telling us things that we're like, that's a lie. Like, you're blatantly lying. They don't care. They really don't care. I forget what we were talking about yesterday. I was like, they're literally just lying to us and they don't even care to like pretend anymore. They're just cats out of the bag. I mean, they really don't care. That's worrying. I mean, look at this. 8 days ago, Boeing gets off the hook by paying a fine, and then Trump awards them the Etihad Airways contract off of his Middle Eastern Safari, and then they got the huge contract for the next gen fighter, and then today another plane falls out of the sky and kills 250 people. I mean, that's what we're working with here. They don't care. They don't care what we say. They don't care how we feel. They don't care.
What kind of plane was it, by the way? I know it was for
Boeing
India.
737, I believe. Boeing.
What? Oh, so it was a buzzer. Sorry.
Yeah, it was a Boeing.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough.
India uses Boeing. They don't use Airbus because they're our ally. They use our planes.
My sympathies are completely with the families, because this was the Indian Airlines, right? This one was going from India to London or London to India.
Indian Airways. Yeah, I think so.
My sympathies goes to those
it didn't
people.
even make it out of India. It doesn't look. Yeah, they didn't even make it out of India. They're saying it could have been a bird strike, but we've seen so many cases like this or similar. Birds don't strike this often. I'm sorry. I worked in aviation for 13 years in the Navy. Birds don't strike this often. And they've had over 10 crashes, I think, in the last 3 years. That's insane.
Boeing is a shit product. It didn't used to be that way. It just become that way. Yeah. We used to have a guy from the National Transportation Safety Board. And what he pointed out was that somewhere along the way, when Boeing, I think is it Eli Whitney? No, it was Boeing and another company that is a finance company joined hands, that they started to care less about the mechanics and the engineering and started forming more focus on how do we make money? How do we make profits? In which case the engineering tanked. It's a trash company.
It's terrible.
And yeah, it's a trash company.
And I worked with Boeing. I worked with Boeing on the P-8 Poseidon, which was the most recent patrol and reconnaissance aircraft. When I tell you that these people are retarded, I shouldn't say that. They're stupid. They're retarded. They're lazy. They actually ripped the military off by saying this has a warranty on it, so nobody can fix this but us for the next 5 years. So the military is screwed either way. They don't give them the support equipment they need. I remember we needed a piece of support equipment to remove a certain module from a plane, and every plane needed one because every plane has that module. They had one for the entire base. It's horrendous. The stuff that like Boeing is a shit company. It's a shit company, and we keep propping them up because we can't say our planes have failed. Our aviation sector is failing.
But that's the military's fault. The military is a Goliath. If you had people who was looking out for U.S. interests, like I always ask this question of bang for the buck. It doesn't matter that we spend $1 trillion a year for the military. It matters a return on investment. And are we certain that the money that we're putting into it is coming back in a return? So, for example, Russia has just beaten all of NATO with an $80 billion a year military budget. That's astonishing. China has $230 billion military budget? And I would wager to you that if that was the case with China, they would have hung whoever allowed that contract to go through that allowed that, meaning that would have never happened in China. Of that nonsense.
The Boeing CEO would be dead.
Yeah, they would do it. They would do it. It's a vital interest. You're talking about something that is our people are going to war over, and you're in it trying to make a buck at the expense of the military. And I would wager to you that all of these companies are doing it. It's not just Boeing. I wager all of them doing it. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm being too brutal. But if you have $1 trillion trough, can you really keep an oversight on where that money is going and how fast that money is going out? And the answer is no. One of my pet, what's the word I'm looking for? Not pet peeves, I can't think of the name of the word, but things that I like is, and this sounds horrible, I love watching interrogations. And one of the things that I used to like also is watching these crime stories. And in one of the crime stories, these two women ran a company selling like nuts, bolts, these like little widgets and stuff like that. They got a contract with the military. And by accident, they realized that the military wasn't looking at the payments. It was automated. And so they would say 30 little widgets, $3,000.
Oh yeah, that happens all the time.
And that is insane to me. They went for years doing that.
We do it knowingly. I mean, there were ball bearings. I just as an example, I used to work in contracting and logistics in the military, and there were ball bearings that I could have gotten at Home Depot for like less than $1 each, and I had to pay like $37 per because I had to get them from a certain company, and then I had to wait. That's just how it is, and that is actually so. That's one of the reasons why Anduril, and that's the business plan for Anduril, really, is to cut that sort of thing out. Right, is to say, now this is going to sound like I'm pitching Anduril, but Anduril saw that problem. This is what these companies do. So they
Yeah.
find problems in the public sector and the semi-private sector, and they say, I can fix that problem, but we got to fully privatize. And that's what Anderl's doing. They're saying, I am going to change. They want to revolutionize the way that we do contracting. Instead of us putting out an idea and then 10 companies coming back and say, here's what I can do with your idea, here's how I can produce it, and here's how much it would cost, that actually puts the costs back on the government, because the government's then responsible for seeing this thing through, right? No matter what the costs are. Anderl plans to go to the government with a product and then says, this is what this product does. If you're interested in buying it, this is how we'll go forward. And so the government, but that puts the control into Anderl's hands. So it's kind of a trade-off. Yes, Anderl's fixing a process, probably not going to make as much money as they would if they entered into the process as it stands, but they're going to monopolize it. They're going to be able to do whatever they want. And then they're going to be able to dictate the tools that the United States government actually uses, because they're going to, that's what Elon Musk does. Here's the information that you get. You got to choose just from this. And that's what Anderl's going to do. Here are the products. This is what you get to choose. Who else is going to make them? Boeing?
Russia doesn't do that as
No.
a policy.
Well, their
China
state
doesn't do
is
that.
very much integrated with their private sector, especially when it comes to the military.
As it should be.
Yes.
As it should be. It's defense.
Well, that's why Russia and China, especially Russia, can move into a war economy very easily, almost seamlessly. America could never. The United States could never move into a war economy the way that Russia could.
I'm an ideologue on this front. There are certain sectors that electricity, energy, military, all of those things should be under state. The private sector, no. No, I do not trust.
That's one of our issues, that we're running out of things to privatize, right? And now we're starting to privatize things that are traditionally, and I mean, that really should be public. And that's what these capitalists do. These sort of come in, and like I said, they see something that people complain about, right? Oh, this is slow. The government's inefficient at this, and they say, I want that government contract. The same thing with USAID. USAID was a Goliath of government funding, and they saw that and they said, we want those contracts. What can we do? And you know who's doing it now? Palantir. So all these things that people think Trump is cutting so much, he's getting rid of all of this bureaucracy. Yeah, getting rid of the bureaucracy part of it, but it's going all to the private sector.
Which is even worse.
It's worse. It's so unregulated. These people are out of control. They don't care. They have no morals. They have nothing. Nothing.
Do you think the U.S. is going to hit Iran? And I'm saying the U.S. because I don't believe that Israel's a rogue actor in this, in the least.
The problem is that these people are walking themselves walking their backs up to walls. Israel's walking itself into a wall. Iran already did. Iran obviously has no deterrence whatsoever. Their strategic patience and their promises, empty promises of True Promise 3, have erased any deterrence that Iran ever had. They're done. So everything that comes out of there is just squawking. The Israelis have to watch out that they don't paint themselves into a corner where they have to strike, and they're almost there. And if they do, like I said earlier, the United States, I guarantee you, I will bet you my next YouTube measly check that if Israel strikes Iran, the United States will have no choice but to support it and get involved, at least on an aviation or maybe a private mercenary level. But definitely they will be striking Iran. I mean, they struck Iran with F-35s already, so technically America's already struck them, really.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't doubt you in the least. I mean, I guess the question, I don't believe for a moment that Israel is doing without the U.S. consent. The only bet that I would take, I think they're going to.
A whole month of theater kid production. Trump's mad at Bibi. They're not friends anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, he's being nice to the Iranians. Like, no, this isn't how this works.
I think the U.S. and Israel is going to run into a buzzsaw, and I am there for it. I'm there for it. I hope Iran did. Look, in the same way Russia had to take its respect at the barrel of a gun, I think Iran is going to have to do the same.
No, they don't have the capability.
They don't have a choice.
They don't have the capability.
You don't think so?
Nope.
I'm skeptical. That I will take your check on.
We're watching Arab idealism buttress up against Israeli cynicism, and cynicism is always going to win because cynicism prepares for the worst and hopes for the best. Idealism always thinks you're just going to have the best outcome. I mean, that's what the axis of resistance. They're idealists. They are. They you know, everything's in God's hands, and I mean, it's fine to be that way, but Israelis are the opposite. They're like, God said this and we got to carry it out. Like, this is the onus is on us. We got to prepare for the worst, but hope for the best, and let's go. And that's why the Israelis are it's just different. And that's, you know what? The Russians are very much like that. Hope for the best, but we got to prepare for the worst.
I think Israel and the US are ideologues. And I think ideologues are by definition wrong. Usually they're wrong. They usually get shit wrong.
The wrong person doesn't always lose. I mean, I don't agree with this.
No, that's true. No, what I mean by that is their perception of reality is often, I'm just saying their perception of reality is often wrong. It's often jaded. Like Hitler was racist. Yeah,
but
and I think the US is thinking in the same way that the US looked at Russia and they thought, oh yeah, they're just Nigeria with snow. They're just a gas station pretending to be a country. We could totally take them out. They got it massively wrong. And I think the U.S. is thinking very similar things right now, telling itself Israel was able to destroy all of its missile capabilities and destroy its thing. Now, I would agree with you on this front. Iran could be projecting. All countries project, right? Look how strong we are. Look at our missiles. Look at us. All of these things that we can defend ourselves with. Look at us show our teeth. Agreed. I do agree with you on that front. But I think they're going to run into a buzzsaw. I had Colonel Wilkerson on the show. He said the U.S. will be militarily defeated if we try to pull some shit like this. And he would. Rick, you don't believe him. You buy Douglas McGregor says the same thing.
I don't believe it. No way. This is all very wishful thinking.
I will take your check on this one, Sarah.
Israel.
You put it up. I would take it.
If Israel attacks Iran will not be able to retaliate in a meaningful way. True Promise 2 was a joke. I'm sorry, guys, but it was a joke, okay? Everybody says, oh, they penetrated the air defenses. They built more air defenses since then. They've updated and created new technology. We've been hearing about True Promise 3 for almost a year. You can't do that. You cannot do that. You cannot sit here and say, True Promise 3 is coming. True Promise 3 is coming. It's been memory hold for most people. And when anything comes up with Iran again, that's the first thing they do. You have lost all deterrence. When you allow people to continuously cross your red lines and you just say, you know, True Promise 3 is coming, you're done. You are done. You cannot do that militarily. You have got to strike. There is no such thing as strategic patience, especially when you're dealing with the West. If you were dealing with China, I could see you enacting a strategic patience policy. You are dealing with irrational actors. And that tells me that Iran is not, I don't want to say smart enough, because it's not that. They're not savvy enough. I don't know. They just don't. It's just.
I agree with you on that part. You're dealing with maniacs. Like, meaning these are lunatics. These are outright sociopaths. You've just watched them murder hundreds of thousands of people.
Right.
And the last thing you want to lose is this notion that we will match you for crazy. Like, meaning we will respond in kind.
Iranians would never support that. Yeah. Never. I'm sorry, but no matter, I mean, I know a lot of people can, but in Iran, people like obviously there's good and bad, but they're also pretty divided. You have to remember the taxes of the Iranian people have gone to places like Palestine and Lebanon to feed Iran's proxies. There's no ifs, ands, or buts around that.
Yeah.
And the Iranian people are sick of it. They are sick of it. They're struggling inside of their country due to our sanctions regime, and them sending money abroad is obviously not helping. So
but doesn't that answer your first question, your first point? That Iran, yes, they should have responded, if you want to say that, but they're dealing with a divided country, and B, they're dealing with a country with nukes. And in the same way that Russia is
right, but Iran told us that they were days away from making a nuke. They've told us that multiple times. So why haven't you made the nuke then? They have no deterrence. It's all empty promises and bluster. That's
I think that's wrong. I think that's so wrong.
the issue.
I think there are other strategic considerations.
True Promise 2 was nothing. They wiped out Hezbollah. Hamas is a mess. What am I looking at here? The only formidable proxy is the Houthis. The militias in Iraq are disarmed. What is Iran going to do? They want them to strike U.S. bases. They already said that their response will not include U.S. bases, so they're not planning on striking them. They said it yesterday. Our response will include sites inside of Israel. They are not going to strike U.S. bases. Iran knows that they're up against a wall. If Israel strikes them, they already know we're restricted to responding to only Israel.
Where are you seeing that? Because I just saw the IRGC chief who came out and effectively said we will hit U.S. military bases.
Yeah, it was from the foreign minister, I believe. It was yesterday.
I got you. Because I'm seeing something different. Right here, if the war breaks out, the side will definitely suffer more casualties. Then us and America will be forced to leave the region. We would target all American bases in the region without hesitation. Just last week, we tested our missiles. This was Iran's defense minister told reporters a few hours ago. I can show you the video.
It's all talk, though. They can't do anything to the United States. They really can't.
If Iran is put in a situation where the existence of the state is at
stake, they strike a United States base, they'll be wiped off the face of the earth.
But they may be wiped off the face of the earth anyway. What's to lose?
No, they won't. If they stay with Israel, it'll go tit for tat, just like they did with True Promise 2. A back and forth. We're going to destroy your nuclear sites. All right, we'll hit you back. And that'll be the end of it. Just like True Promise 2. America does not want to be dragged into this war, and Iran does not want America in this war, and neither does Russia, because Russia's agreement with Iran does not guarantee that Russia comes to its defense. It absolutely does not, and it will not when it comes to Israel. Russia has a very special relationship with Israel, and it's working on its relationship with the United States. So who's going to come to defend Iran? China?
What, 30% of Israel are Russians? Something like that. It's some insanely high number.
Right. So Russia's not going to get involved. So who?
I don't think Russia wants a war.
Iran?
Well,
No,
I don't think Russia wants a war. I don't even think Iran wants a war. But put it this way, it depends on how bad the strike is. It depends on what the U.S. does within the context of the strike. If it's a skirmish versus if it's this week-long bombing campaign or something to that effect. Like it depends on what it is. But True Promise 2, I think you're missing what True Promise 2 was. True Promise 2 wasn't this.
Round?
Yeah, I think it was a practice round.
And then what? Practice for what?
It's a practice. Look, the first time Iran responded to Israel, it was this dog and pony show with the United States, where they effectively told the U.S.
They've gotten 2 people assassinated inside of Iran. Multiple oil refineries are blown up in pipelines. And instead of saying what it really was, Iran says, oh, it was just, an error or a mistake, and we'll just handle it quietly inside. Iran is completely defanged. We're avoiding war, but we're working on True Promise 3.
You want a war.
I don't want a war. I don't want Iran should not be involved at all. Iran should agree to the agreement and be done with it. That's it.
Screw that. That I don't agree with. I don't agree with.
Then the whole region will blow up into war. I don't know what to tell you. These countries have to understand your sovereignty only goes as far as your power. And if you can't defend it, and you keep on talking about True Promise 3 for a year, we're going to test that power, and we're going to find out what's really going on. You cannot do this. You cannot. You can't do this. Strategic patience will kill you. It's hurt Russia. It's hurt Russia very, very badly in this war. And if you don't learn from other people's mistakes, then you're screwed. In the end, you are screwed.
That I agree with. I agree with everything that just came out of your mouth. I just disagree with. They are looking at, I think you hit it right on the head. Strategic patience. It's not really patient in the long run. It's just ridiculous. It doesn't help you. And Russia had to learn that the hard way. And I think Iran is going to learn it the hard way. They've lost credibility. And credibility would have been, we said we're going to strike, we're going to strike. It doesn't matter if Russia is telling us not to do it because they don't want to get pulled into something. It doesn't matter what somebody else is saying. We're going to strike because we have to strike. This is us creating deterrence. They didn't get the memo.
Russia wouldn't tell them not to strike anyway. That's their sovereignty. Russia wouldn't encroach on their sovereignty like that.
I so disagree.
Especially given that they're in their own war.
And just to be clear, tell may be too strong. What I'm saying is they would advise patience. We're dealing with Putin. I mean, he's not this ogre that I think people are talking about.
We can blame Putin for the strategic patience then? All right.
No.
It's
Not
a
blaming Putin.
huge mistake, and Hezbollah made the same mistake. Strategic patience, and they
Agreed.
lost Nasrallah. These people want to destroy Iran.
Yes.
So they've waited a year to see True Promise 3, and there isn't one. There's been
Agreed.
some videos of an underground submarine base, an underground missile silo that are probably AI, most of it anyway. And people go crazy, and they're like, oh, Israel's getting scared. No, they're not. They're suicidal. They're not scared of anything.
Oh, I don't think Israel was suicidal. I think from their point of view, they're creating greater Israel. And in their minds, these guys are a paper tiger. I think it's to your point. We push, they didn't respond. We're going to keep pushing. We're going to keep pushing. We're going to keep pushing. Yeah. And so if Iran doesn't know that yet, even with nukes, by the way, they're not going to get the memo. But I don't buy this notion that these guys are a paper tiger. I don't buy that.
I don't think that they're a paper tiger. No. I think that they're a formidable opponent. They're not going to beat Israel in the United States. No, there's no way. There's just no way.
I would take your paycheck on that, Sarah.
All right.
I would take your paycheck in a heartbeat.
And
I don't even, this sounds horrible because I don't even want to bet on this. Yeah, this sounds horrible. I guess, yeah, we disagree on this one. I think they're going to run into a buzzsaw. I think they are looking at this with ideological blinders every bit as much as the U.S. was looking through this with Russia, where they took every notion of pragmatism as weakness up until the point where it wasn't. But we'll see, unfortunately. Unfortunately, we'll see. Let's get to the riots. By the way, I hope.
The fake riots?
Okay. Let's step into it.
Fake riots. Okay, there are people there.
It's 10 o'clock.
No,
I have
you're
to
fine.
let you go.
You're fine.
I promise I will let you go at 10 a.m.
No, you're fine. My only opinion is there are people there, and there are people that absolutely, this is their issue, this is their cause, they feel strongly about it, they're willing to put their bodies on the line, et cetera, et cetera. That I commend them. It's not my cause. I don't feel strongly about it, but I don't ever criticize people's way of protesting or their right and whatnot and what have you. So
I criticize their way.
Well, here's the thing. This stuff has been so sensationalized and taken out of pocket. I have sent people to various locations. We have looked at the footage on the ground. These are not large. They're like a couple hundred people in these pockets, maybe 1,000 or 2. These are not large. This is not BLM. There was no need to send in the National Guard. There was no need to send in the Marines. The LAPD, and I've been saying this on every chance I get, the LAPD has a larger budget than the military of Hungary. If they can't handle under 5,000 protesters in different pockets across the city, there is a serious issue.
Agreed.
And we know that they can. So what are they really trying to do here? They want it to spread. They want it to get bigger. And I know you don't spend a lot of time online. I'm terminally online for you. They're all of the Con Inc., all of the right-wing grifters. What are they saying? We could use Palantir to clean this up. Let's use Palantir to find these people. This comes on the heels of J.D. Vance meeting with podcasters and Laura Loomer in the White House, where they talked about Palantir and getting people to agree to Palantir. So that's what these are. They're sensationalized. They're over exaggerated. So they could say, we can't get these people under control. We need help. We need advanced technological help. And here comes Palantir saving the day. Just like they said, we are responsible for crushing the far right in Europe. They'll crush the far left in the United States too. So that's all this is. This is an advertisement for privatized security and surveillance, period.
I think it's worse than that.
Oh, I'm sure, of course it is. That's not even the worst of it. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the notion that a few protesters on the streets, and Trump is like, we must send in Marines, trained killers, to deal with a few protesters is outrageous. There, as you pointed out, there are more people at BLM protests that were burning down police stations, not just setting cars on fire, than what is taking place here.
Yeah, it's very
Trump was like, we must send Marines to California. Really? We got to send Marines, the most lethal trained killers in the world. We got to send those guys to deal with Americans who are protesting in California.
Leftists that you've told me for years have blue hair and are gay and that they're weak and you need the Marines for them. You told me that they were weak. And that's what I keep saying to MAGA. They hate it so much. I'm like, how come the left outflanks you when it comes to protests? You
It's
guys got
insane.
to pull out the National Guard and the Marines. Like, and this isn't even that long of a protest. It's supposed to get crazy on Saturday. Who the hell? That's also something. So I think they want a lot of build up to Saturday so they can explode. Not the left. I'm talking about the regime. We'll call them the regime. But I think that they want a lot of tensions to built up, and they're really pushing for some sort of big confrontation or altercation on Saturday. Which,
I think Trump wants a confrontation.
Yes.
And I think the left wants a confrontation also.
It's possible. I'm not in touch with the leftist circles. I don't talk with. They're like the gutter left. I don't really talk to the protest left. I do like the left, but I don't talk. I'm not in those. I'm not running the network. The Seattle left. I love them. They do their jobs, but those aren't my circles. The gutter punks and stuff.
Gutter left.
But
I love it.
the dirtbag left, they used to be called.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think there's enough tension and enough fodder on each side that each side wants a fight, but I think that Trump wants it for different reasons. His is going to be so I can look like the law and order president, so I can say, people are working against me. This is my birthday. This is my military parade. It's my party, and so I think there's a lot of theatrics in it. This is a very theatrical administration. And so I think there's a lot of theatrics involved in it, it's
like each side has something they want out of it, which just sucks. Right?
Well, even the other night, they're like, "It's spreading," and I was like, "Well, I'd probably go to Chicago because there's a large Hispanic and Arab."
York,
right, but then I went to go look at the videos, and it was like 250 people. I was like,
"But yeah, it's supposed to expand." I have to be honest, I'm always skeptical of stuff like this because it's like, who's paying for it? We're about to go to a war with Iran, and we have people who are protesting immigration. And I'm not saying immigration is not a bad thing, but the war with Iran is catastrophic. And you can't get anybody off the couch. Like, not even Matt cares, right? It just blows my mind. I do think that there is a kernel that started it. I mean, the goon squads that Trump was sending to these places was so over the top that I don't doubt that you're going to get people in the streets. I'm always curious about accelerants that are added to the protests to make these things worse and inflame them more so. Trump sitting in the Marines is going to make it worse, not better.
Oh, yeah.
The heavy-handedness is something that he wants because he wants the standoff. And hell, even if it's just to say we need more policing, we need more military rule. Because that provision apparently that he used in order to send those Marines, which is shocking. I don't think people are getting the gravity of the fact that Trump sent Marines into California, can be done anywhere across the U.S. And so you've effectively put U.S. military on home soil to deal with the population.
Yeah,
and
it's unprecedented, and people don't have the historical knowledge to even know the gravity of it. That's another issue. So we get into these things and we're like, do you understand what this means? And they're like, no.
The military is not a police force.
No, this is not allowed. Yes. That's what somebody said last night. They said, I'm a Marine. We're trained to go in and kill. We're not, we should not
kill
be
the enemy
with American citizens.
Which is why they're not supposed to be on U.S. soil. Like, it's a big fucking deal. And people are like, MAGA, of course, who would blow Trump in a heartbeat on anything that Donald Trump does.
They want a protester to die.
Yeah. They're okay with it.
They would love it.
Okay.
Should have been there. You deserve it. You deserve it. You shouldn't have been there. Don't block traffic, right?
Yep. Until it's them on January 6th.
Oh,
and then Donald Trump.
And Ashley Babbitt, the government has to pay Ashley Babbitt's family $5 million of our tax money or whatever it was. Give me a break. These people are
pay shit. They shouldn't have to pay shit. Nope. I'm sorry. You don't like the result of an election, and you are trying to break down the door.
Not even that. You put your body on the line. You're protesting. Yes. That's what a protest is. It's you physically putting your body on the line. I don't know why the right can't wrap their mind around that. If you die, you die. You died for your cause. That's it. This is suing the government because you wanted to go climbing into windows, breaking windows, and climbing into the Capitol. Like that was a revolution or an insurrection or whatever you guys tried to do. You lost. You got. That's the end. You don't get to sue because you did stupid shit, but they sued and you went, or not they didn't sue. They were actually offered, I think.
And of course, Trump is in office and it's effectively saying, hey, that riot that tried to take down the Capitol and hang Mike Pence and potentially capture political leaders, it's okay. Everything is good with that. And so we're going to let you guys out.
Cracking down on it was the mistake. We'll pay you because we hurt you while you were.
That shit is outrageous. Oh, that shit is outrageous. Oh, that is outrageous.
But the America's too stupid to read the message that it actually sends, which is exactly what you said.
They don't get it. They don't get it. I don't know.
They'll kill you too. They don't care. And then they'll send your family a check if you're lucky. If you're not, they'll just kill you, and that's the end of it. But they're showing you they don't give a shit.
We'll end it on that, Sarah. Bils. They show you they don't give a shit. Because you're right. They don't. I don't think they do. Like, and maybe that's why we're seeing these protests like this. Because they know the government doesn't give a shit about us, whether it's either political party. And honestly, to me, the ones that I hate the most are the cultists. I don't care what party they're in. I hate the cultists.
I really haven't seen a lot of left cultists lately.
Maybe they're there. The people who are sycophants for Joe Biden, sycophants for the Democratic Party, who, oh no, Joe Biden is great. Kamala Harris is fantastic.
I've heard a lot of the AOC praise. I'm like, I'm not doing this again with you people. I'm not doing this again.
The censorship is fantastic. It's totally okay with the censorship. We need to keep fighting the war in Ukraine. We need to stick it to Putin. Oh, those people are there. Those people are there. They're cultists. They are MSNBC watchers. Anything that comes out of Rachel Maddow's mouth, they're going to repeat it almost like a robot. I'm serious. My doctor used to be an NBC watcher, Democrat. And I wouldn't know exactly what she was going to say. But whatever was floating around in Democratic circles, and it would be like robotic. It's so bizarre. Same thing with MAGA. Anything that Donald Trump does. Oh my God, dear leader. And you could see it in those meetings where they're like, Donald Trump is such a great man. He smells fantastic. He's doing everything for America. And then it goes to the next person. And the next person comes up with different adjectives, but it's effectively doing the same thing. And it's like, okay, you people are ridiculous. Those people are terrifying to me. Those people are terrifying.
They're multiplying because it's easier to not think. It's starting to get hard to think. And it's easier.
No, it's not hard to think. It's not hard to not think. I mean, you have it's called values, and your values aren't reflexive, depending upon the political party. Do you agree with this, yeah or nay? And when your guy does it, it doesn't make it right. When they do it, it doesn't make it right. And you should be okay. Like, meaning that's not hard or shouldn't be hard. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm out of my fucking mind. Sarah, thank you for this. You're always awesome to talk to. I always enjoy these conversations. I think that's the first time.
Don't forget about our bet. We'll see if our bet, what happens. And
it feels horrible for me making that bet. I feel horrible even think. I was talking, I forget who I was talking to yesterday, and I was like, God, man, I hope they do attack and Iran knocks that shit out the sky. I hope they destroy their enemies.
I hope so too.
They're fucking bullies. And they keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And it's like, bullies should get their nose smashed. That's the only way they learn. That's the only way they leave you alone. And in this case, there are two that are doing this. You are fantastic. Well, by the way, when is your next show for DD GeoPolitics? You guys, I've been seeing you guys doing shows.
Sundays at noon, Wednesdays, or Sundays at 2, Wednesdays at noon. But I think we might move that Wednesday at noon slot. George Galloway, this dude, I don't know how he does it. He streams every day at 12 noon. And I'm like,
he does every day? I didn't think he did every day. Does he?
I think so. And I'm like, I got to move my show. I'm not competing with George. So I'm going to move my Wednesday show, I think, to a little bit later.
He is a juggernaut. He would like 10,000 views
all
every
the time.
Live.
I'm like, I can't compete with George Galloway. So I'm going to move my Wednesday show back to 1, I think 1 or 2 o'clock. But we'll see. But you guys just find us on Twitter. We're always around. You can't get
That's why I love my 7 a.m. slot.
Yep. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants
it. The lone man.
Yeah.
Sarah, thank you for this. Sarah Bils, DD GeoPolitics. Check her out. She has a fantastic outlet. I always see her on Twitter, but of course they also have their other shows, so definitely check her out. All right, who do we have here? Let's see. Wanda, USA. The moment Hamas took money from Israel and the United States, they were a Zionist entity, not Palestinian. First compared to the U.S. Congress. You know what's funny? It did cross my mind that maybe they were. It did cross my mind. I don't think that's where they ended up, though, but I don't think that's where they are at this point. I mean, the fact that Israel is paying for ISIS gangs to attack Hamas on some level indicates that they are not on the same page. And Hamas has been killing Israeli soldiers. I have like multiple videos of Hamas still fighting, still plugging away. One guy jumps out, puts a bomb on a tank, runs back into cover, tank blows up. Another one to get into this firefight, one of the Israelis. In fact, in that one, Israeli soldiers were holding Hamas, or let's say a Palestinian, because that's all it was. It looks like a just regular person, as a shield for bullets. And so imagine 4 military guys in military armament. They're holding somebody in front of them. They go into a hallway. He gets shot immediately because they're holding him as a literal shield. One of the other Israelis get killed. They have to drag him out. And then they engage in this firefight looking very clumsy and kooky in their military armaments and everything else. So Hamas is still plugging away. They're killing their enemy with the little resources they have at their disposal. Arabs are blood-born Semitic. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. What is this? Afro-Sciatic? Is that what that says? But yes, they are. They're Semitic people also, even though everybody blissfully forgets that. Ignoring ancient history is problematic. Again, agreed, Wanda, USA. Diane Thomas, don't make many comments, but Sarah is wrong on this one. Sarah's wrong on which one? I don't know which one she is referring to in regards to Sarah. Which comment? Jamal, please have Professor Morandi with Sarah. Professor Morandi will be on the show on Sunday. He will be on the show on Sunday. Let's put it in context. Sarah has a point of view. And I'm going to break a point of view into 2 points. 1 point, credibility. If you remember in the very beginning when Iran was hit, they said, we have reinstalled deterrence. Okay. And what did you get from me? Criticism, complete, utter criticism. Because what they did was a dog and pony show with the United States, where they effectively told the US where all the drones and everything else was going to come from, in which case all of those things were knocked out the sky. Okay, you're playing patty cake with a country that you consider to be the great Satan or the great enemy in this case. That's not deterrence. That's something else. That shows a lack of will, commitment, ability to strike, and willingness to strike. So there's that. The second thing that came out was True Promise. Okay, on that one, they got more aggressive, in which case they were able to penetrate Israel's armaments, in which case, from their point of view, we hit you. Your Iron Dome was worth shit. Hell, your Iron Dome can't even stop the Houthis. How the hell you think it's going to stop us? So in that case, they're trying to instill deterrence. Problem, Israel struck back. And Iran says True Promise 3 is coming up. And it never came. So Sarah's point, it's not wrong. You are dealing with a group of sociopaths that has just murdered 200,000 people. And you honestly think they won't do the same to you? They will kill every man, woman, Iranian without a second thought. Wouldn't think twice. They would burn babies alive if they got the opportunity to do so to Iranians. They would do it in a heartbeat. They had no issue with doing it in Syria, Lebanon, or for that matter, Gaza, and they would do it in the West Bank. This is your opponent. Understand, meaning you need to have a clear point of view on the limits or the level to which your opponent is willing to stoop in regards to their level of sociopathy or psychopaths who are effectively running this. They have no compunction in this. They're murderers, they're killers. They're lunatic whack jobs that is willing to murder and kill every bit as much of Iranians as they are Palestinians. You better know that. That's your opponent. Lord knows you didn't ask for that opponent, but that is your opponent. Be aware. So if you are going to back away from your threats of we're going to respond, and then you believe that people just forgot about the fact that you said you were going to respond, Israel didn't forget that fact. What they took from that, in the same way that they took from Putin as pragmatism, as weakness, they just saw weakness. That's all they saw. They're weak. They don't have the goods. They can't do what they said they believe or what they've been claiming that they're going to do. They're showing their teeth. They're showing their muscles, but in the reality of things, they don't have the willingness or the determination to effectively resist us. That's what they saw. Sarah's not wrong on that front. Full stop. She's not. I think the exact same thing. It is a secondary point, however, that I do think she's wrong on the capability. Just because you don't want to get involved into a larger war, which is what I'm saying would have ended up into a larger war. The secondary to whether you have the capability of doing so. And I strongly suspect that what Iran did was we need to harden our defenses. We need to figure out how we defend ourselves. War's coming. I would wager to you that's what it was. Yes, we're going to pretend that we're in negotiations. We're going to deal with these sham negotiations because we fully believe that the United States is not an honest actor in this, because we're not an honest actor in this. We know that they were working with the Israelis. We've been preparing for this war for 20 years. I suspect that's what they think. So AI generated? No, I don't buy that in the least. Capability? Yes, I think they're going to run into a buzzsaw. I think Israel's going to run into a buzzsaw. I think the U.S. is going to run into a buzzsaw, and I think they're going to be surprised with Israeli Iranian capability. That's just my thought. Do I know that? No, I don't. Any more than Sarah knows it. I don't know it. That's a flat fact. I don't know it. Why do I think it? I think it because I think ideologues tend to fuck up and get it wrong. And when you have these people who are ideologues who looked at Russia thinking, hey, we think they're weak. We think we can take over. You got it wrong. You're wrong. You're completely wrong. When they got their drone knocked out the sky, it was like, oh my God, we didn't realize Iran could knock a drone at that high. Well, fuck, well, you got it wrong. When Israel had its Iron Dome, was shown to be wood dome, jello dome, because their missiles can penetrate. Okay, again, you got it wrong. You continuously get this shit wrong. You are a country of 8 million people dealing with a country 3 times the size of Iraq. They will fuck you up. That is my belief. And the only thing that is holding their hand or restraining their hand is that you have nukes and you are lunatics and you would use those nukes. Again, going back to the first point, these are sociopaths. They're lunatics. They're whack jobs. They will burn alive every Iranian child if they can get their hands on it. 70% of the Israeli population would be like, fair game. They would have no issue doing it. So would they be insane enough to use nukes? Yes, they would. That is what you're dealing with. So pragmatism in the way that Putin was using it, and he saw for weakness, is the same thing that Israel sees it as weakness. And the fact that they have nukes, if that is the thing that's staying in your hand, then your hand is always going to be stayed. The catch and the change to this becomes, if you attack them, and this becomes existential, all bets are off. All bets are off. So if you're going to do a strike that is, not going to stop their nuclear deterrence, meaning you're not going to hit the nuclear reactors. If the U.S. and Israel are going to do a week-long military campaign, good luck with that. Good luck with that. How many losses are you willing to accept? Are you certain of what Iran's capability actually is? And I wager they're not. So again, not acting is not the same thing as not having capability. I think those things are different. That's why I disagree with her on. Her first point, completely right. Her first point is completely right. I will have Morandi on the show. I will bring this up to Morandi. I tried to get him on a few days ago. The time frames didn't work right. I usually bring him on Sunday. We would have this conversation on Sunday. I can tell you what he's going to say, though. We're well prepared for an attack. We will defend ourselves. Our sovereignty is not up for grabs, et cetera, et cetera. But pragmatism in this situation was not to their betterment. I would say that. And when you had Hezbollah, when you had Yemen, we used to have Yemen. When you had Syria, you might have been better off waging that war then, as opposed to, the Anne Frank argument of, when they came for the whatever, they weren't here. When they came for this group, they weren't here. When they came for this group, they weren't here. And then they came for me and there was nobody around to protect me. Here you are. Here you are. So I cringe at this case, at this argument. I cringe at this argument because who am I to tell another country that they should embroil themselves into a war? No fucking body. It's not my country. But at the same token, it's my country that's doing it, which makes me far more aggressive and pursuing this point of saying, dude, you need to know your enemy. Your enemy wants all of you to die. You see what happened to Syria. You see what happened to Iraq. You see what happened to Afghanistan. Do you want that to be you? Or Libya? Do you want that to be you? And if you don't, you better behave accordingly. So Miranda will be here. It is no point in having Miranda argue with Sarah. There's no point. But he will be here to make his case. Let's keep going. Sarah's making a strong and well-assessed point. It's not about what she wants, because she's not the birthday girl. She's calling it as she sees it. Yes, agreed. Brave, on this one, I agree with you. Agreed. It's a military argument. It's deterrence, the entire point. And that was Iran's point when they did True Promise 2. This is us instilling deterrence. We are showing you that we can destroy you and penetrate your air defenses if we need to. But they hit you back. And you can put out pictures of you laughing, fair enough. But if you do that, then you can't say we're putting out True Promise 3. You just have to say, this was nothing. We're done with this. Call it a day. But that's not what happened. We're going to put up True Promise 3. We're going to attack in True Promise 3. True Promise 3 is coming. Here's a promo video of True Promise 3. Okay, maybe everybody will forget that we said anything about True Promise 3. It's that. That's your issue. They don't think you're serious. And because they don't think you're serious, they're continuing to push and push and push. And look, the fact of the matter is, deterrence can keep you out of wars, and lack of deterrence can get you into wars. It's that, right? There's, God, and I hate to relate this to jailhouse because I've never been to jail, but I have seen people on TV in jail. And one of the goons, like the guy was a thug, in the most literal, full-throated sense of the word. And he was talking about how he goes extorts people for money who just get put in jail. And he had a strategy to it. For fuck's sake. He says, I look for people. And he said, I take my shirt off because I want to flex. I want to look strong. And when they can see my muscles, they want to see how serious I am when I do it. And he says, effectively, I can avoid fights by doing that because I can just scare the shit out of the people in the way that I deal with them in my demeanor and avoid exchanges that, I might have to get involved to a larger fight. Yeah, it shouldn't take a jailhouse inmate to kind of tell you the same shit. But I imagine if you don't want your country to go to war, you're trying to avoid it, and you call it pragmatism to try to do everything in your power to avoid that war, you are never going to get Western media to agree with you. Never. Which is why I always thought it was a fool's errand for Putin to do it or try. You have a band of sociopaths that are trying to take your lives, take your territory, take your land, and eliminate you from the face of the earth. They're backed by another group of sociopaths that is in full step with this other group of sociopaths. Behave accordingly. I don't believe Russia is going to come to your aid militarily. I damn sure don't believe China is going to come to your aid militarily. They may give you weapons. They may give you products. They may assist you in that sense, but they're not putting Russian troops into that region. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. She's not wrong. Brave, I agree with you on that one. The well-dressed nerd, Sarah's making a strong and well-assessed point. It's not about what you write. And by the way, to make it clear that it's not what she wants, if you notice when I pointed out, I hope Iran destroys its enemies, every last one of them. Every last one of them. And she says, I agree. It's not about her wants. It's not about her wants. She's frustrated. And I get that frustration on so many counts. When I'm on the show with, I forget who I was talking to yesterday, Dimitri. And I point out to Dimitri, I said, God, I hope they, and then I stopped myself from saying it. And Dimitri said, I know what you're about to say. Like, I want them to get their nose broken. And I want everybody else that's involved in it to get their nose fucking broken, their face cracked. And unfortunately, the pragmatism that either Russia or Iran has been showing in all of this, it's not taken for pragmatism. It's only taken for weakness. So yes. On the first issue, Sarah has a point. On the second issue, I disagree. Brave, agreed. Wanda H, MAGA is anti-war, or we would have voted for Kamala. How is MAGA anti-war? How's MAGA anti-war? Do you honestly believe that MAGA is voting for Kamala Harris under any circumstance? Like, what's the circumstance to which you believe that MAGA is voting for Kamala Harris? Be honest question. Or for that matter, take Kamala Harris off. Under what circumstance do you believe MAGA is voting for any Democrat? Yeah, they might have lumped on the Trump, but Trump could have said anything and it would have lumped on the Trump. It's their dear leader. It's their strong man. They like him for being a strong man and their dear leader. I don't buy this notion that, look, there may be some of them, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey, some of these, Thomas Massey can't be MAGA. He's not even invited to the picnic, right? There are some who are honest, true believers in regards to this notion of they don't want to be involved in war and everything else. But you fell for a con. I'm sorry. I was willing to not be reflexively abrasive against Trump on this notion of whether or not he was being serious about ending the wars. Fair enough. Let's see what he does. The last president was a lunatic. He was effectively, 5 minutes from death. What does this one says? Yes, I don't think he's very bright. No, I don't think he knows anything about the world or anything like that. But if he has an instinct for not wanting to get the U.S. embroiled in war, fair enough. I'm an honest actor. Let's see if he does it. If he does it, I give him credit for it. He didn't do it. He didn't do it. He didn't do it. He didn't do it. On no front, he lied about actually trying to get a deal in Iran. I don't believe for a moment that he was. He lied about trying to get a deal with Russia. I don't believe he is. I think he's a U.S. president that, for all intents and purposes, wants a deal on the U.S. terms to make it look as if the U.S. didn't lose a war that the U.S. absolutely lost. It's that. He lost. That's not a deal. He just lost. There's a difference in those things. If I get into a fight and I get my ass kicked, and at the very end, I'm, hey, let's just stop this fight so we can just go home and call it a day. Okay, yeah, but I'm asking that because I got my ass kicked. There's a difference in those things. He lost. The U.S. lost. Otherwise, Donald Trump will be doing and pushing for an advantage every bit as much as he was pushing for an advantage in Iran or, for that matter, in Gaza. There is a difference in those things. So, no, MAGA just got had. You just got had. There's nothing else to say. Every bit as much as people who thought Joe Biden was pushing for $15 an hour minimum wage got had. We were lied to. At some point, I would hope that people are more cynical about their politicians, that this red and blue shit goes away and they're able to call it for what it is. But fact of the matter is, MAGA is going to defend Donald Trump. And even now, it's the deep state. It's the deep state. That's the problem. Trump is not being told about what's happening. There are forces working in the shadows that are preventing Trump from doing. He has a good heart of gold that he just wants to get this up. Nonsense. He's a sociopath, just like all of the other ones. He's just dumb as a box of rocks. And real truth, he doesn't care about the lives of these various people. He's amoral under normal circumstances in the way that he operates to the truth and towards human life. That is who he is. So no, I'm sorry for the real people in MAGA who actually didn't want these wars, who thought that Donald Trump was going to end these wars, who are honest actors on that front, can call a spade and say that, yeah, he's full of shit on this issue. Many of those people in MAGA are not. They're cultists, every bit as much as cultists running around for Joe Biden and simping for the Democratic Party. Just saying. Anybody that is making this case that Donald Trump is, there's the deep state that's working against Donald Trump. I don't want to hear it. Talk to somebody that cares. I don't want to hear that shit. I don't want to hear it. What's this one? Sir bikes a lot a day. If you can comprehend it, if you can't comprehend it, then you can't imagine it. You think, Thomas, therefore you can't imagine. Wait, if you can't comprehend it, then you can't imagine it. You think, Thomas, therefore you can't imagine not using your noggin. Okay, I have no idea what you just said there, Sir Bikes. I have no idea what that tweet is trying to convey to me. But thank you. I just don't know what you're trying to communicate on that one. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that tweet is saying. I'm sorry. I don't know what that one is saying. It's not a tweet, but that super chat. All right, I'm beginning to drag ass, so I'm going to call it a day. Shout out to all of you. I hope that this is a pressure campaign by Trump. I hope this is a pressure campaign by Israel to try to force Iran into something that they're not going to settle for. But let's be clear, whether it's now, whether it's a week from now, whether it's a month from now, Trump is going to have to shit or get off the pot. And a choice is going to have to be made on whether or not he decides to go through with strikes when Iran tells him to go fuck himself and not give up their sovereignty, or accept something less than what he claims he wants. There are no two. There's nothing in between that. Door A or door B. There's no other magical door C. Either you accept what they're willing to give in regards to some kind of negotiation, you don't accept it, and you let your dog strike with you backing it. There is no door C. We'll see what happens. I'm going to say like. I'm going to say share. I'm going to say subscribe. And I will see you guys bright and early. I'm supposed to have Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro tomorrow. He sent me okay. Okay. That was Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro. He saw my video with Kim, and he said, Kim is so wrong. He said, she's so wrong. He says, when we talk tomorrow, I want you to give me the hardest questions you can think of. He said, hit me with everything that Kim had to say in that clip. He said, I want to answer it all. Fair enough. Fair enough. So he's geared up. He's ready. He is ready. All right. I'm going to say like. I'm going to say share. I'm going to say subscribe. I'm going to hit him back. I love that. That is fantastic. Because I hit him up, I think it was last week, and I said, hey, can you come on the show? When he saw Kim's video, he was like, oh, hell no. Hell no. Oh, she's wrong. She's so wrong. And so he was geared up to deal with that. So that should be a really interesting conversation. He is the guy who can answer that. Yeah, I'm excited to talk to him. I haven't talked to him in a long time, so it should be nice to talk to him. Marandi should be here Sunday. So I will bring up what Sarah had to say. Again, I disagree with her second take. I agree with her first. I disagree with the second. First being, if you're trying to instill deterrence, then you need to instill deterrence. You're dealing with sociopaths. They don't care about your projections. In the second sense, capability is not the same thing as patience. Those are different things. You know, the guy who doesn't want to fight is not the same as the guy who can't fight. Those are very different things. All right, guys, you all have a fantastic no fan of Kim. I love Kim. I love Kim Iverson. I think she's fantastic. I love her to death. Her and I will argue like cats and dogs. At the end of it, I still love her to death. So, but I'm going to say like, share, subscribe, and I will see you guys. By the way, I think you guys get Kim wrong too. I think you may even be getting Sarah wrong. Sometimes what you're hearing out of us is frustration. I really do think that. Like, I think what you're hearing out of Kim is frustration. I think what you're hearing out of Sarah is frustration. I think oftentimes what you hear out of me is frustration. We live here. We see how this government acts. And it makes you more brutal as a host when you see the way your government acts and you see the effects it has in the larger world that you disagree with. It's not that Kim agrees with what Israel is doing. She hates that shit. She would consider it genocide every bit as much as I do. But it's like, okay, but how do you stop that? And then you see all of these Jews that are backing it. What is your thought at that point? And do you get frustrated at that? And do you take a hard-ass position because of it? Yes, that's conceivably so. Does it mean that she doesn't believe it? Yeah, she may believe it. Does it mean it is not inspired by frustration? Yes, it's probably inspired by frustration. When you're looking at what is taking place with Israel and you are wanting a response to that, when I'm like, God, man, I hope they hit so they can, well, what am I saying? I hope they respond and they break their nose. Okay, well, again, that's frustration. The way it's coming out in Sarah is more in the sense of they should have responded already. The difference between us is I feel some kind of way and telling another government that you should attack somebody. It's still some kind of way in saying it. So I don't know. I'll end this. I'm going to say like, share, subscribe. I will see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning. Thank you for everybody that helps support the show. You can support PayPal, Patreon, Super Chats. All of that stuff helps. Buy me a coffee. That's another one apparently that's out. You guys help to make sure what it is. And thank you for it. Many of these shows are demonetized. So you all actually do help keep this show going. And I thank you and appreciate you for it. You all have a fantastic evening, and I'll see you in the morning. Thanks all. What's a good show as always? Not always. There are days. I'm honest enough to say so. Have a good one, guys. Be safe, okay?